as the corporate director for four cabinet members, which cover the directorate, and the corporate director for communities, Janine Nightingale. So I'll invite those four cabinet members to make some very brief comments on the budget pressures within their particular directorate, and then Janine to add any supplementary remarks. So who would like to go first?
Apologies, Chair. Do you mind if I just explain for the purposes of the recording the responsibilities?
Of course,
because
that would be helpful.
the directorate is quite diverse in communities. So I have four cabinet members, Chair. Councillor Farr, who's on the call here, covers for my directorate economic development. Then Councillor Good covers regeneration and then planning. Then I have Councillor Williams, Howell Williams, who covers corporate landlord, and then Councillor Spanswick does everything else. So everything from sustainability through to parks, through to highways and waste services. So it's quite a broad portfolio. But if I may give just a few high-level remarks, so I think it covers most of the directorate. And then if that would be okay with you, Chair, and then of course, I'm very happy for our cabinet to comment if that would be okay with you. But
absolutely.
So, so far it's been a difficult session, hasn't it? And it's not a great budget position, but I wanted to say that we are in the Communities Directorate. We've only got a very small revenue budget. We're only 9% of the council's overall budget at 32.8 million, but we're delivering many, many good services. We are out there currently delivering community services and also a range of fantastic projects. For instance, we've just finished the recently completed Cozy Corner project down in Porthcawl. It's a wonderful example of partnership working with Welsh Government and grant funding. So whilst the revenue budget is small, the capital budget of the directorate is very large. So the revenue is 32.8, but the capital budget is over 60 million. Our outturn figure in Q2, Chair, and Scrutiny has changed, I'm afraid. Our deficit was 122,000. We're now projecting a 600,000 deficit. Now, some of my areas have surplus, and it's those areas that cover a fee earning and or are covered by grant, and there's a few areas that are in deficit. But what it's done overall, it's come out with a £600,000 deficit overall. Lots of difficulties and pressures in the directorate, not least the number of vacancies we're carrying. We were carrying 61 vacancies. I'm afraid I've had another resignation of an architect this week. 61 vacancies in my professional services layer. So it's an incredibly difficult position. However, I have a great team, but what is very clear is that we do need to look, after 10 years of austerity in communities and 11.7 million of savings made already, what is very challenging now is making more savings going forward, because literally I think the only thing we can do in future years, Chair, is to look at stopping services. And we've talked about this new target operating model that we've started working on. So just a bit of a high level, just to explain, and I'll stop there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. That's useful to provide context from your perspective as the corporate director. Can I invite any other cabinet members to make any general remarks on their areas, their portfolios? Nilo's raised her hand first, so Councillor Farr. You've done a me. If you're on mute, Councillor Farr.
That better?
Yeah, you can hear you now.
Brilliant. Yeah, I have to go in about 15 minutes. The thing is, Chair, my portfolio is quite strange because I cover all four directors. So if you allow me, I can just give you a brief overview over all the stuff that comes under me. So for education, I've got Flying Start and Youth Services, which is all funded in the main by grants. That's education. For the communities, I cover economy. So currently the team are delivering their targets in line with the budget that we have. We are not one of the services forecasting a huge overspend, which I'm glad to say. A significant amount of what we do in these teams is externally grant funded. The proportion of the budget that council puts forward these areas is very small. So we need to be aware of March 2025 is the date where currently our SPF funding is due to end. Without the continuation of this fund, there would be a huge hole in relation to what BCBC can do for the economy and people skills support. Our employability team is solely funded by grants, and if this is not awarded again, then we would not be able to support residents with employment or training opportunities or support people to start up their own businesses. In the chief exec area, I cover the community safety and violence against women and young girls. Again, this is all grant funded. We only have 3 people that are employed through our core budget. So the main area I cover, Chair, is all grant funded. I know we spoke earlier on about trying to get these grants as a core budget, but I guess I would be concerned about that because it is a double-edged sword at the end of the day. Because when we have grant funded, these services are protected and we can deliver what people need. But I guess on the other hand, if these grants stop, then people will end up losing the jobs. And I guess if the grant was transferred into a core funding, I'd be concerned, would we still be able to deliver this services? It doesn't get taken away to fund overspent in elsewhere. Under the social services and the wellbeing part that I do, currently the partnership with Halo and Arwen are working well within the budget. The other prevention and wellbeing services within the council is projecting underspent, again, which is linked into grant funding opportunities. This underspent is lesser now because we spent quite a few of the budget on the summer activities. But yeah, like I said, my post is mostly grant funded. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer any question before I shoot off.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farr, for outlining the different areas which are in your portfolio and some of the financial implications. We'll go to Councillor Spanswick now and then Councillor Good.
Thank you, Chair. And before I go into some of the detail, I'd just like to a brief comment as well. It's my 24th year, believe it or not, of going through the budget process, the painful budget process, which I haven't seen it like this is worrying times. It is extreme where we are now, but we will get through it. We have to get through it as a team, as a one council approach. So, but the difficulties ahead are frightening what we have to approach, but we make it work. And I suppose for half of those 24 years, I've been banging on about don't cut the communities directorate, don't cut the. Unfortunately, that hasn't been heard loud. I said loud enough on heard, but we are where we are. Lots of cuts, not efficiency savings. Lots of cuts have been made. Maybe in the early years of efficiency, they are clear, difficult, severe cuts now. On the position where we are now, and going into next year, the 2 areas. I won't go into the areas I cover, but I like to call them visible services, and they're the ones that the people think they pay the council tax for, and nothing else. But there's a lot more than that the council tax covers, you know. But it's waste and fleet, the 2 big areas. Then the waste, sort of, the moment that the pilot CRC is mentioned in the report, and that is disappointing because the way NRW have not really been very helpful in getting that centre open. It's been in 2 years waiting to be open. We are nearly there now. We've set up regular meetings now with the leader, myself, and officers with NRW, and it appears now that by the end of this year, it should be, we'll have the licence in place, or Kia, I should say, Kia will have the licence in place, and that marvellous facility which is there waiting to be used can be used as we start getting to next year. We have an issue with the food waste bags. We've held back, waiting for national guidance on food waste bags, and we're still not there. And I think there's more debate needed on it. We have a 35k saving, but more recently I've done a bit more research and I'm a bit concerned about the saving involves us possibly using bags with microplastics in them. And there's a bigger issue there about the whole future generations, and should we be moving away from bags without plastics to bags with plastic in them because it's making a saving. But and I welcome Scrutiny's input over the next year or two with our future waste services model, because simple to saving sometimes might sound okay, but we need to think future generations and not bringing microplastics into our food chain. The closure of the CRC site 1 day a week, that consultation is taking place. I think November now we'll have a cabinet report. It's taken longer than anticipated. It's just down to resource not there, and we'll see what comes of that. Of the saving, a small part of the saving, the 50k we made was not anywhere near, but it'll be made going into next year. One of the big sort of spends this year has gone is the increase in the absorbent hygiene products and garden waste. Both good services, but costing a lot more because more people are taking up the services. So there's an issue again, debate in the future, more perhaps with the garden waste, should that become full cost recovery? But then maybe less people will take it up. So there's an issue about encouraging composting at home and a lot more work there. And again, Scrutiny's input that would be very valid. So there's loads of stuff going on with waste and a lot more we can do, but we've got opportunities to change that model moving forward. The fleet services desperately needs a change. It used to actually not just break even, it used to bring in some income, albeit maybe paper income, because it was internal charges for other services getting the vehicles maintained. Unfortunately, that due to various factors is going the wrong direction. Now I think it's 230k projected overspend. So the report urgently needed. The director is preparing one, and the cabinet are going to make decisions, and council on the way forward to that, because it cannot continue in its current model. We've joined with the police, a great in some ways. We collaborated the way things has to be done by Welsh Government and that, but it's costing. It's not breaking even. So that's it's discussion in the future. Moving forward to next year, and something that hasn't been touched on yet, the revenue budget pressure, a worrying one, is our public transport. The Welsh Government have stepped in this year and been great, helping to keep the bus network going. As it stands at this moment in time, and it's rapidly going into the new year, will be coming to us, is the fact that what happens to the bus services post March 24, and they have 56 days after deregister services. Because come January, we're in a position where we have to decide, are we able to support bus services in our communities post April 1st next year? And there's a massive revenue impact there, and a decision that we have to discuss soon, and Scrutiny input again would be welcome. I won't say any more at the moment, because it'd be interesting to see a few questions and thoughts on the way forward in communities directed visible services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanziak, and you're absolutely right. The public realm is what people most associate, don't they, with their council tax. So it's an area which is key to communicate to residents the challenges in this particular area. Bringing Councillor Good, and I can see there are many questions then after Councillor Williams, the final fourth cabinet member, which covers this area. So Councillor Good, please.
Thanks, Chair. I would just, as Janine and other cabinet members have noted, we've all sort of divided up the pie of cabinets of communities a little bit. So I'll just try and go through each of the three main areas that I cover in the community directorate, which is planning, corporate landlord, and regeneration. So I think, as you can see in the report, from planning's point of view, we do have an underspend currently due to increase in fees from planning applications. The thing I would note there, and I know Janine sort of touched on it, is we do face quite a lot of staffing pressures within that team. I know there is work to reorganise that team, which is currently funded from a EMR, but that is something that hopefully going forward will become more and more sustainable, particularly with the regeneration plans in the LDP around the borough, as well as the regen in Porthcawl. Similarly, you'll see from corporate landlord, there's an overspend there, partly then subsidised by the fact that we don't have staff in this team. I think corporate landlord particularly is somewhere where I would flag to the committee as an area which I feel a lot of concern about. There's a lot of work that requires corporate landlords' input, and I think we've seen from the situation with the Bridgend indoor market that when things unexpectedly happen, we then have very, very limited capacity to deal with anything beyond that emergent situation. And I would just take a moment to bring to the committee's attention the diligence and hard work of Justin Kingdon, because honestly, how that man keeps going is beyond me, because he is essentially a one-man band, and it is a tremendously difficult job of very complex work. So I just wanted to flag that committee to the committee as well as somewhere that we do need to be making sure that while there is currently an overspend because we haven't brought in as much revenue from that, it should be noted as well that this is currently a one-man band, and that is quite concerning. Then in terms of regen, there isn't a tremendous revenue impact of regen. Most of it is funded from grant funding, as Councillor Farr noted, and from funding for projects. The only thing I would bring to attention, though, is obviously we are going to have to talk about My Stake Town Hall at some point soon as full council in terms of finding that extra bit of funding to complete the project. I think we've all at length talked about the issues that have happened in My Stake Town Hall as a project. And while we are very keen to see that finished, it is something that we need to be keeping an eye on in terms of the budgetary impact of that, particularly as we move forward to starting the Porthcawl Pavilion project. And I think there is a lot of learning to be done there. I know we were talking last week, Janine and Cabinet, around the tender process for the build of the pavilion, and this is something that we're very keen to make sure that we have very stringent views on, and when we go out to tender, making sure that we're very clear that there isn't extra money, there isn't anything beyond the funding we have, and that has to be very clear to people. I think hopefully with Porthcawl, it being a very different project to My Stig, not as old a building, not with as many sort of buried timbers and other bits and bobs that have occurred due to the historic nature of My Stig, that we won't face those similar challenges. But just to reassure the committee on that, we are taking a lot of steps to make sure that we are being sort of laser focused on making sure that that next project has the scrutiny and the understanding of what's happening well in advance, as opposed to finding ourselves in a situation where, as we did with the dry rot, sort of unexpectedly then having to put new works in. I'll leave it there, Chair, but happy to answer any questions from the committee on any of these subjects.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good, for the overview of your responsibilities in the Communities Directorate. Just picking up a point before I bring in Councillor Williams as the fourth Cabinet member, but not last but not least, of course. Councillor Good, you mentioned My Stake Town Hall and the pressures there. Are we now saying that the budget envelope will be broken and we require further funding to complete the project?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Thank you for that confirmation. Councillor Williams, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And maybe Councillor Good's aware of something I'm not, but I believe a corporate landlord is with me at the moment anyway.
Oh, terribly sorry, Councillor Williams.
I might find something out later on. Who knows? But no, yeah, just to I think Councillor Good have covered the aspects there. The team is severely understaffed, and that is causing problems, obviously, going forward in developing a strategy there. Justin is doing a fantastic job in very difficult circumstances. But I think I just want to touch on something that the Chief Executive mentioned earlier. Efficient use of our buildings is one of those key points in the 5-point recovery plan. And therefore, it's essential that we do get this team up and running as soon as possible. And it's a very challenging market trying to lease out buildings at the moment. But if we can't lease them, then possibly it's the best thing is to just release them, and then we don't have that pressure going forward. So there's clearly a lot of work to be done in this area. And we're happy to take some questions, and I'm sure that there will be future reports coming on this fairly soon. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Janine and 4 Cabinet members have offset many of our different questions already, but there are a number of members who raised their hands, so we'll go to Councillor Simon Griffiths first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Going back to one of Councillor Spanswick's points about cost recovery, and it seems that we're in a position where the more successful some of our schemes are, the more it costs us, which is an unfortunate position to be in. And I think in this context and its environment, I think we should be considering moving every service that we provide to be on a cost recovery basis, especially in the waste disposal area, where I know that we have targets to meet, but we are extremely good at those targets at the moment. So I would encourage us to do what you suggest, Councillor Spanswick, which is to move to a cost recovery approach on all of those services, which we shouldn't be spending more if we're successful.
Chair, if I have a very quick response to that, that is a key element of the fees and charges element in the 5-point plan, which I know had been mentioned earlier, and I'm sure that the members have got a lot of interest in this, and we will need to bring a paper to you as soon as we possibly can.
I guess on the cost recovery elements, which you mentioned, there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? I think, as is mentioned in the report, in that you don't want, a decrease in the number of people who subscribe to the service, because it could have ramifications such as an increase in fly tipping, etc. So there is a balance to be struck. Of course, due to the financial concerns that are dominating our discussions today, we may have to look at full cost recovery, but the ramifications do need to be borne in mind as well. I know that. Thank you very much for the response, Councillor Williams. Janine, did you want to come in on that? Go on, please, Janine.
Yes, please, if I may, Chair, but you made the point beautifully.
Okay.
Absolutely. When we are absolutely, we want to do full cost recovery, but there are some areas where it does have an impact. You're absolutely right. For instance, things like bulky waste, there is only so much we can go up in fees before we start seeing instances of fly tipping. So some of it's very difficult. And the other thing as well is burials. The burial service, unfortunately, we could never get anywhere near a full cost recovery on burials, I'm afraid, because the cost of that service in cemeteries would be something like a 600% increase to be full cost recovered. So where we can, we absolutely will. But you're right, there's a pivot point where we know it's not, we can't exceed. But absolutely, our intention is to get full cost recovery wherever we can. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Janine. Councillor Hughes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, on the update about my State Town Hall, if I could ask that local members in the Llanelli Valley be briefed as soon as possible. Obviously, we keen to see the project progress. If I could, Chair, I'll just ask 3 questions on the Communities Directorate, and I'll try to be brief in the process. The first one is on the planning and development, where I think, as Janine has mentioned, there are some income generators, and this department is one of them. Basically, I think I'm seeking an assurance on the remarks of Mark a bit earlier on about the moratorium on recruitment, taking a selective and intelligent approach, and they were his words. In a situation like this, I would expect that staffing be maximised in order to ensure that we can have a quicker turnaround in terms of planning applications, that we meet those targets, but we also are able to generate more. So it's sort of leaving that point there, I think, Chair, before I move on then to the next issue, which is on the garden waste. That I understand there was a small increase this year, but actually the take-up had increased, which is slightly strange, because normally when costs increase, you find that demand reduces. So I think on that basis, where there is some scope possibly to look at the charges for garden waste, do we know how far we are from the break-even situation? Perhaps in terms of users per head, I think that'll be quite useful to help us in some of the discussions that we're going to have in the coming months. And finally, on the fleet services, it seems to me that the service is quite wide-ranging. It covers a number of areas. I just wondering basically how far that could be perhaps rationalised. And I note from the report that there's a report being drawn up at the moment to look at the operating model. How far away are we from having a sight of that report? So thanks, Chair. I hope I've been succinct in those. If there's anything you want me to further explain, I'll be happy to do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I think that's clear, and Janine will be able to answer your questions, I'm sure.
Marvellous. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Well, with regard to My Stake Town Hall, we are currently working with our cost consultants, Mace, and we're working with Knox and Wells and our Cabinet member to get to a position where we know the final outcome of completing the Town Hall and the timescales. And I know you've been up and visited recently, and you can see there's an awful lot of work going on there. Unfortunately, we did have another instance of dry rot. And unfortunately, we've also been you know, we've got a cost price inflation on there. If you remember, that contract was let nearly 4.5 years ago now. And some of the costs that went in, for instance, for painting that main hall are 4.5 years old. So of course, now when it comes to painting the main hall, the costs have increased, and rightly so. You know, it's not something you wouldn't expect after this time. Cost price inflation has gone across all our projects. So what we are doing now is working with Knox and Wells and Mace to get that final account resolved and to get that time frame. And then, yes, of course, once we're there, we would report back to Cabinet and Council, and we will have that conversation with you as local members. Not a problem at all. So I'm happy to do that. With regard to the income for planning officers, I've said many times before, now we've got a very small planning department, but we are resolving that now in Bridgend, thankfully. We've got an EMR in place and we are recruiting planning officers into the structure. And that's because hopefully, with our fingers crossed, we will have an LDP hopefully approved by Welsh Government at the tail end of this year. And we're hoping we can report it back to Council early next year. And what that means is we'll have a number of very, very large planning applications arriving into Bridgend with significant fees attached. So going forward, the planners will generate the fee. But I must say something, it's not about more planners mean we'll do things quicker. It just means we'll be able to deal with a larger volume as opposed to quicker. Because for me, it's always been about the quality of the decision we make rather than how fast we can turn it round. But I absolutely get your point. That's important. The reason at the minute we've got a surplus on the planning is that we've had a couple of very large applications come in with large fees recently. Bridgend College application, you'll remember, the Bridgend Tennis Centre has come in, and we've recently approved the South Wales Police, their new firing range and tactical centre down in Pencode. So those have come in, we're carrying very large planning fees with them, so we're in a surplus. But it's always the same in development control. One month you have large numbers of applications, and next month you could have less. But the planning is moving in the right direction as well, so that's good news, hopefully. With regard to the garden waste cost increase, we're about 65,000 from a break-even position. That's what we're projecting on that currently. So what we will need to look is what that means between subscribers, and is there any way that we can get to a break-even position? And the same with the AHP products. That's something that the team are working on now. So hopefully I should be able to come back to you and let you know that. And then with the fleet services piece, that has been a really complex piece of work because it's the services we provide with South Wales Police, joint services. And for years, we've had an incredibly efficient, effective model, but there are starting to become issues with it. Not least, we've had some quite long-term sickness in some of the technicians. We've got an older demographic of very, very experienced people who work there, but unfortunately it's very hard labour. It is a difficult job with very heavy machinery, so unfortunately you do get periods of sickness. Now, also the other issue we've got is South Wales Police technicians. Our technicians and South Wales Police technicians work on each other's vehicles. Whatever vehicle is in, we have an agreement, we just work on the vehicles in place. But there's a situation now where the South Wales Police have given their technicians a pay increase, which means there's a differential in pay now between our technicians and theirs. And now the reason they've had an increase is because there's electric vehicles coming through, and they've had a supplement in pay for new technology. So we are trying to reconcile that as well as make sure the service breaks even. Now, it's not about rationalising the service that's provided, it's ensuring the fees we charge are enough to have a break-even position. But Councillor Spanswick is correct in terms of, I call it wooden dollars, because this is all internal recharge. If we charge more, what it will do is it will just sit on the account across other service areas. So I'm very mindful that I don't want to push that deficit budget to just another direction Directorate by, for instance, charging more for social services to service their vehicles. That is not what we want to do. So what we want to do is look at the model in a really intelligent way to see if what we can do to ensure we don't just move that cost around. Because right now, with our difficult and challenging budget, so that's the piece of work we're doing, is looking at it completely and seeing what we can do. The other issue, of course, is there's more and more turn to ULEV, ultra low emission vehicles, electric, and the police are actually looking at an application for hydrogen. And of course, if we decide as a council to bring our waste fleet and our waste services back in-house, we'll have a responsibility, of course, for maintaining those vehicles too. So there's quite a lot to consider with that fleet vehicle piece. And that's why it's taken longer than we intended, because we want to do it once and we want to do it right. So hopefully that's answered some of the questions there for you today.
Are you content with that, Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thank you, Janine. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Janine. And when will that report operating model expect to be completed, and a timescale for that? Do you have one, or?
Well, I'm hoping to get it done this autumn, Chair, and I know we're well into October now. I'm very mindful of that, but unfortunately, quite a lot of the staff that I would want heavily involved have been involved in the implementation of the 20 mile an hour mandatory speed. So that, unfortunately, has sucked in a lot of resource. So when we are getting to the end of that implementation, I'll be able to bring those resources across and focus our attention on this. So
Sure.
hopefully this autumn, Chair, but definitely by the next financial year, we'd like to have a new model in place.
Great, that's great. Thank you, Janine. Councillor Paul Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I just looking at page 30 of the report. It's at the top of the page. It mentions that there's a projected overspend of 600,000. Previous reports we've had have been underspending these reports, and we've sent money back apparently to into the budget, etc. Can Janine just give us some feel of where these underspends are now and in relation to this, or are they gone by the wayside? What is the situation with that?
Well, no, absolutely, Chair. Sorry, I've jumped in then.
It's fine. Carry on, Janine.
I did name drop you, Janine, didn't I?
Yes, no, not a problem at all, Councillor. So what we have in communities is we have 600,000 deficit. However, some budgets are in surplus and some budgets are in deficit. And when we move the two together, it gives us 600 under. So for instance, planning has fees and income attached to it. So they are in a surplus position. We also have a surplus position in some of the areas such as engineers, which again are fee generating, and also in highways, because some of the staff in highways have been supported by capital schemes. So those schemes are providing a surplus, which basically reduces my deficit. So overall is 600,000, but some areas are in surplus and some are in deficit. So it just, I mean, there's quite a large deficit, unfortunately, at the moment in corporate landlord, 616. And a lot of that is to do with vacant properties and not generating the income from the properties, such as, for instance, nearly 200,000 for for Bridgend Market, because we had to close because of the RAC issues, unfortunately. And that, of course, may just increase in subsequent months until we resolve the issues there. But some of the deficit in corporate landlord has been offset because I've now got 22 vacancies. So the vacancies offset the deficit. So that's what's happened in the budget. The deficit would be larger if I didn't offset it with surpluses. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Councillor Davis. I'll move now to Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Spanswick did mention these two issues, but they have been a hangover on previous reports for quite some time now. Can we be assured that the NRW licence for pile recycling site is imminent? And when will exactly when will the consultation be fed back on the CRC closure? As we need to inform BREP and we need to be kind of feeding that information into the process right now. It's crucial for future planning.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Janine?
Councillor Bennett, I wish I could tell you exactly when that licence will be forthcoming. That would be wonderful. We've been trying for the last 2 years to get that licence out of NRW. However, what I would say, I think the first application Kia made was refused. on some very small grounds. Then we appealed, then a second application went in for Kia, but we're now working with one of the directors at Natural Resources Wales. The application's been duly made, we're giving supplementary information, and what we think is hopefully, I can't guarantee that for you, I cannot, because it's not in my hands. It's a Kia application to Natural Resources. Hopefully we'll get that resolved. We hope by the end of this year, so we can get that facility open in the spring, but I'm afraid I can't give you any guarantees on that. It's the closest we've been, is how I feel, but I'm afraid that is a decision for Natural Resources Wales. It's not a decision for us. And sorry, what was the second question?
Can I just ask another one on that one then, Janine, before I come on to the second one? It's if we then end up changing the contractor, that's not going to have an impact on the application for the license,
yes,
is it?
It will, because the application has been made by Kia. But what happens once the application is in place, the waste license is for Kia to operate at that site. When we change to the new provider, which we now know is Plan B, they will be the new provider. The license will then have to be transferred from Kia to Plan B. So there'll be a transfer of the license. It'll be the same site, the same methodology. So that should be simpler, but there will be a transfer of the license, yeah.
Thank you. And the second one was the CRC consultation. We should be able to know a date of when that goes to Cabinet, shouldn't we? Is that
absolutely
in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's targeted for November Cabinet, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
So that consultation is back, and so hopefully it'll be with you soon.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thanks very much, Chair. I've got 3 questions on communities. The first one is a quick one touching on the planning, and you said about the underspend, but I know in previous meetings we've been told that you are severely short-staffed in planning, and we've been discussing about recruitment freezes. And then you're also talking about with the new LDP, you should have some extremely large developments coming through. How will we cope? And are you still able to recruit into some of these posts? Because I'm worried that your department will be burnt out, particularly if we've got all these applications coming in. So that's my first question, please.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Janine?
I take that. Thank you, Chair. No, absolutely, Councillor Williams, and I share your concern as well. We're not underspent. We've generated more income, if that makes sense. The income fees are higher rather than it being underspent. So the only reason for that is we've had those 3 very large applications come in. We're still reliant on an earmarked reserve to fund that recruitment. At the moment, we haven't done too badly because we have advertised the more senior posts in that new structure, and the fantastic staff we already have been successful and have moved up. So what we will be bringing in is planning assistants and lower level planners into the bottom, and we'll be training them with our planners in place. And what we do see quite a lot in local government in Wales is people move around authorities. So we're hoping that we will have new planning graduates coming in or movement around local authorities in the region. So far it's been fairly successful, but you are absolutely right. When that LDP is approved, we will be having significant large scale applications with some immediacy, I would guess, coming into the authority, and they will need some very experienced staff. So that is a concern, but the recruitment so far has gone quite well. We still are having difficulty with getting people into highways, highway engineers and or highway planners. That's an area we're not doing so well on, but with the general development control, we're doing well so far. We're not out of the woods, and if large applications come in, it still is very reliant, for instance, on the group manager. Rodri Davis does an awful lot of applications himself. He's not in that position where he can just look at the work of everyone else. He has to process applications, but I am less concerned than I was previously because I've seen a movement there. So hopefully that answers. That's an honest answer, really.
Thank you, Janine. Over to you again, Councillor Williams.
Yeah. Oh, the next question is, you mentioned about my stake and the cost of paint and things. I wondered if it's possible, how do we protect our budgets that we put aside for these large projects from that's run over time. How do we protect our budgets if timescales aren't adhered to? Is there something we can do? Because obviously everything will go up. The price of everything will go up over the years. Is there a way of us protecting something when we go out to tender and agree contracts?
No, sorry, Chair. Do you mind if I answer that?
Oh, I'll carry on, Janine. No problem.
Thank you. No, absolutely. It's a very good point, actually. I think the problem that we have with My Stake Town Hall is we started it the month before COVID. So we've had the pandemic and so it's been a very elongated project, far longer than any of us would have liked. But unfortunately, that was the circumstances we were in. So the impact on this will be much higher than normal. When we normally let a contract, for instance, let's take the example of the contract that we will be putting together for the pavilion. We know that the build time on the pavilion may be 18 months to 2 years. So the contractor will put an inflationary uplift for the 2 years will be included in the pricing. Then we'll have a contingency and a risk element. So in theory, some of that is built into the contract price at the first instance. The difficulty with My Stake Town Hall is that contract is now 4.5, 5 years old. So they will not have built in this incredibly high cost price inflation. So that's the difficulty there. But going forward, most contracts always have that built in for the time frame of the construction period. But yeah, absolutely, you're right to ask that question, and especially now with the lessons learned out of My Stake, we are looking at our risk contingency, and we're looking at a general contingency as well, because there isn't any capital project in the council that hasn't been affected and impacted by this, albeit it's a very extraordinary time, isn't it, for finances currently.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Williams.
Apologies, I had 2 more questions. It was 4, but I will be quick. Corporate landlord, and in the report it says about Ravenscourt. It says that there's been difficulty in take-up of renting out part of Ravenscourt, but Mark Shepherd said when he spoke introducing this report that about the whole of Ravenscourt. So I wondered if you could clarify, are we trying, because obviously we've got to find the money wherever we can, are we trying now to rent out the whole of Ravenscourt and relocate the people who are in there in Civic? So I just wanted clarity on that, and then I got one final question, please.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Janine.
Thank you. Yes, yes, Councillor Williams, that is our approach now. I think we have to do everything that we can within our gifts now in that 5-point plan that Mark set out. So whilst at one point we were looking at Ravenscourt, maybe we could use it as part of our, until we knew what our new service delivery model was. But I think the decision has now been made that we need to vacate that building as quickly as possible in order to make cost savings. There are currently 2 people in there. We've got the MASH, and we've also got South Wales Police Community Policing Team. So we need to relocate them into the Civic Centre, and that's the work that's been undertaken now. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just relocating them because there's an awful lot involved. So we're hoping that can be done by the end of the financial year. So next financial year, we'll hopefully have that building vacated in its full form. But Chair, I noticed that Mark Shepherd did put his hand up there. I'm wondering whether Mark would like to come back in on that point.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, Mark did put his hand up and he put it down. So, Mark.
Well, apologies, Chair. I'm just conscious of time. I won't reiterate. Simply to say that the intention now is to focus activities in Civic to empty Ravenscourt, as Janine said. The initial move from South Wales Police into the ground floor of Civic, we anticipate will be about January time. The MASH move is slightly more complex, not so much because of the physical move, but because of the ICT system that the police in particular need to install. That's more likely to be around about April time. So just to give you some timescales on those 2 things. Obviously then once Ravenscourt is empty, it can be leased, it could be sold, it could be repurposed. There are then a range of options that would need to be considered to maximise the benefits to the council. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Councillor Gebbie, was it on this point?
It is on this point, and just to clarify something that Janine said, it's not 2 people. There's 2 teams of 2 teams.
Yeah, sorry.
It sounds like we've got 1 building supporting 2 members of staff, and that isn't the case. Not at all.
Apologies, Councillor Gebbie. I meant to say 2 teams of people. Sorry.
Thanks for that clarification, Councillor Gebbie. Councillor Williams, your final question?
Yeah, my final one is on the purple bags and the increase in costs. And I don't know if anyone else has had the same. I've had increased referrals coming in because now that people are being cared for in their own homes, they've said that they're simply swamped now with bags of purple waste, incontinence pads and all the sheets and everything. And I know that residents are struggling some to even store all of this waste now because it has increased that much. So I've got concerns as to how we, obviously we haven't got the budget. This has cost us a lot more than it should have done, than we were expecting.
Yeah.
But how do we balance that when we've got members of the public who are now taking over the role of carer instead of putting their relatives into the care homes and everything, and making sure that they can store everything because it's a 2-weekly collection. The smell in some of these houses must be horrific. And also managing our budget. So it's a difficult one, but yeah, that's my question. Thanks.
Thanks, Janine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, absolutely, Councillor Williams, we completely understand that, and that's something that we're trying to resolve internally. Full cost recovery on AHP would be an increase of 115,000 across the providers. And again, that's back to my earlier point about the pivot point. When does it become too onerous to pay for that, as opposed to how we collect and store and the frequency of that service? So that is one of the things that we are having discussions with Plan B about. Will be our new provider, whether there's anything we can do. Now, what is very clear is if we increase any frequency in service, it will cost more. So we do need to look at the cost of the service versus the frequency of collection, or to see whether there's anything we can do in terms of containers, external containers, so that these bags don't have to be kept within the property. I understand I had the same situation with relatives my end who live in my stake. It's a difficult situation, and you're right, more people are being cared for at home, hence the increase in this. So what I would say on that point, please bear with us. We are aware of it, and we're trying to make some positive changes in this area. And as soon as we do have a way forward, we will come back to you and explain to the communities what it is. But we are aware and we want to get it fixed.
Thank you very much, Janine. Councillor Williams, you contend?
Yes, thank you very much, Janine.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Councillor Jones. Thank you for being patient.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair. I want to talk about, if I may, project management, which is linked to regeneration. And there's an interesting article in the Sunday Times this weekend about project management of HS2. Now, when I was reading the article, I was thinking this could be applied, or what was being reported could be applied to project management right across the public domain. And what the article talks about is a lack of management then, or alleges, I should say, a lack of management and public oversight on HS2. And can I say I have absolutely no information or evidence to suggest that what is being reported on Sunday is going on in Bridgend. But the public in the county borough will read quotes like costs, risks, timescales and benefits are being manipulated to suit individuals or organizational goals rather than the public interest. And the article goes on to talk about the funding envelope. Now, this afternoon or today, we've previously talked about project management, and Janine, you say you work with those companies that we procure services out to. So can we expand, please? What does working with look like? For example, when we have meetings with contractors, are the meetings properly recorded, documented? Do we have risk assessment, risk registers in place that can all be available for public scrutiny, especially for those projects where we are spending millions of taxpayers' money here in Bridgend? So first of all, can we talk about what does this working with look like? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
come in,
Councillor
Chair?
Jones. Yes, Janine,
Yeah.
please.
If I may, Chair, may I say a lot of this now is about the capital programme and the way we manage capital projects.
Yeah.
So that I'm sorry about that, Councillor Jones, because it absolutely I can answer that question, but I am minded that we are straining to the capital programme now. But let me see if I can answer some of the question. So in essence, what does working with mean? Well, we have all sorts of project management layers and governance in the council. And let me just assure you, we have to do, where we have grant schemes, we have to do quarterly returns on finance that go back to the grant schemes, whether it be Shared Prosperity Fund, whether it be Welsh Government money, whether it be HNIP, central government money. The governance and the robustness on the finances, it's very, very complex and detailed. Our colleagues in finance sit on project boards, internal project boards for projects that meet monthly. So we have an oversight on finances going forward. Now, can those be in the public domain? I'm afraid they can't, because when it's a live project, it's commercially sensitive. Can we give you headline figures? Absolutely, because that's what we want to do via council and cabinet reports. Risk management, exactly the same. With complex projects such as the pavilion we're about to start, with projects such as the breakwater down at Porthcawl, that was nearly £10 million for the breakwater piece, we bring in external project managers. So for instance, we had a gentleman came and worked with us from Capita Red Start, via our Red Start framework. Fantastic officer, I'm going to name check him, Neil Little, he was wonderful. He represented Bridgend as the project manager and the cost consultant, and we had an incredibly successful flood scheme. It was Welsh Government monies, it was a grant that was for us. So he completed all the returns, monitored the work, monitored the outcomes. Now, we don't have that expertise for all those different types of projects in-house. We're not able to have that. So what we do is we bring in experts in project management fit for the scheme that we have. So for instance, with the pavilion, we will be bringing in a specialist, we're out to tender shortly, a specialist project manager and cost consultant that will have specialists in heritage buildings, and they will represent us. But just to say, in terms of the HS2 piece, I mean, that was billions and billions, wasn't it? That's a very difficult scheme. But in terms of the money that we own and control as grant funding, just to assure you, there's very robust governance. I know Caris and her team prepare, I have a capital accountant and I have a revenue accountant. They prepare all the returns and they have to go back quarterly to ensure that we are well within the terms and conditions of our grants going forward. Again, can we share the risk logs with you? Well, it depends how commercially sensitive some of the information is on the risk log. But just to say, you know, we are here, I'm here as your corporate director to give you that assurance that those projects are working. And we've got our cabinet member here, Councillor Good and Councillor Spanswick, who sit on these boards and see this information, because we're just about to establish a capital programme board on the 5th or 6th of November, where we're going to have corporate oversight of these projects. So hopefully, sorry, Chair, I know we've strayed into capital programme now, but hopefully that has answered and provided some assurances to Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Jeannie. That was still a useful contribution. Councillor Williams, you'd like to come in with supplementary remarks?
Well, yeah, the final sentence sort of stole my thunder there from the corporate director. Yeah, we're very keen to learn the lessons, obviously, of past projects, and we will be setting up a capital programme board, which is going to be meeting now on a regular basis, starting early next month. And we'll try and see if there's any kind of reporting that we can bring out of that. So that's a new venture for us, but we try and get some kind of reporting method we can share with members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Jones, content?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the reason I came in, Chair, with this topic item now, because I picked up a comment that Janine made about working with when we talked about the My Stake Town Hall. So am I to understand then that at the moment, other than cabinet overview, there doesn't appear any public scrutiny of projects until we set up this board on the 6th of November.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Janine?
No, I don't think that's correct, Councillor Jones, because we have a scrutiny committee set up and we have a cabinet reporting process. What we can't do is to discuss commercially sensitive live projects. I am in contract currently with Knox and Wells and Mace to complete Maesteg Town Hall. So what I can't do in the public domain is tell you how much things are costing and discuss the ins and outs of those contracts in the public domain, because it is commercially sensitive. Plus it's a negotiated position as well. So where I can, I will. But obviously you must understand, when it's a commercial contract that we've signed with them, I can't discuss that until I have an agreed position. For instance, with Maesteg Town Hall, when we have the agreed amount to a negotiated position to finish that project and the time frame for that, then of course we will come and discuss that with you. At council if we do need more capital, and it'll be via cabinet if we need more revenue. So no, absolutely. And once that project is finished, I have discussed this with our scrutiny chairs. Once that project is finished, I have said absolutely, let's do a deep dive, and that's something we're doing ourselves, because I want to know what lessons can be learned. Absolutely, there'll be lessons to be learned from our performance, 100%. From, is there anything in the contract we could have done different, the way we set the contract up and how we contract managed it as well? Absolutely, let's have all of that, because anything we can learn going forward is only good for us. And I'm very willing to have that, but I'm afraid I can't have that until that contract is finished because of the commercially sensitive nature. And it wouldn't be right, would it? I can't discuss what I'm negotiating with companies in the public domain. I'm not able to do that, am I, by contract law? Hope that,
Okay.
does that answer?
Chair, can I just come in with one more?
Just one
Please
second.
indulge me. Yes,
I
of course.
will just
Jean,
1 second. Just 1 second. Councillor Jones, just 1 second. I've been reminded by the monitoring officer that we're straying into capital finance rather than revenue support.
Yeah.
So
I want to talk about process. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
Just talk about process.
I'll indulge you on this occasion, but we have to bear in mind what the monitoring officer is saying. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I gave the reason why I adapted to the capital programme because of the comment that was made previously by Janine regarding Maesteg Town Hall. What I would remind members is we have BREP. BREP certainly receives sensitive and confidential information within BCBC, and unless there's a statutory reason why we can't have information on our procurement processes as outlined by Janine, then I think that needs to be made clear to members within the BREP process. But can I just end by saying this? Councillor Amanda Williams previously talked about cost price inflation. What reassurance can we be given today that the public purse is not picking up sole responsibility for cost price inflation?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Janine?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that really, to be honest with you, Chair, because if there is cost price inflation on a project that we are working with a contractor, then that is the price of the contract itself. Obviously, everything is scrutinised very heavily to make sure we're only paying relevant information. We're only paying for work that's pertinent to that project. But just to remind Councillor Jones, a lot, for instance, we're talking about Maesteg Town Hall a lot, and maybe we shouldn't, but in particular, a lot of that scheme has been funded by external grants. What I don't think would be fair is if we didn't reflect on the impact it would have on contractors as a result of this very large inflationary increase. Now, that is not fair to the contractor. If, for instance, he had a price 4 years ago and now it's 3 times the amount, that is the price in the marketplace currently. And as a council, we are always fair and equitable. It's part of our existence and part of our corporate plan. However, what we will be doing is heavily scrutinising any additional monies that are asked for and making sure we're paying a fair amount, because value to the public purse is something we should never question. It's part of our culture, Councillor Jones. We always want the best for the community. So I don't know whether that has answered it, or whether you'd like a more technical explanation from Caris or our councillor Howell Williams, but from my point of view, it's just about ensuring that everything that is being asked for is legitimate and is an important part of that project cost.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
I'm very conscious that another member would like to speak, so thank you, and thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Councillor Jones. And we must ensure that we focus on revenue rather than capital finance on this occasion, because this report is on revenue rather than capital. So we'll go to Councillor Bledsoe now.
Thank you, Chair. I have just two quick questions. My first one relates to page 21, 3.2.5, COM 2 on there. We've got the proposals that are unlikely to be achieved in full, and that's one of them about the blue badge consultation. I'm just concerned that this was in last year's budget. It's now here again. We were told in the March meeting that it was going out to public consultation in, I believe you said March to April, Janine. I don't think that's happened, and I understand why, because of the 20 mile an hour. However, I'm just a little bit concerned that this is now becoming a bit like a sword of Damocles over the most vulnerable in our society. The persons who hold blue badges hold them for a reason. We've already seen that the mobility scheme in Bridgend Town has been removed, and I believe that was a saving of 250,000, I think it was. Or was it not? Tell me what the figure is then. I can't remember. But it was a
yeah.
It was a saving, wasn't it, Janine?
It was a very small saving, Councillor Bledsoe. The 250,000 you referred to was the cost of relocating it to different a capital cost, and unfortunately we don't have that money. I think the saving was very small. It was around about 13,000 because some of that facility is funded by grants. But if I
sorry, can I get to my question though?
Please
sorry,
do,
is that
please
okay?
do.
So, no worries, you can answer whatever you like. But no, so my question is though, because obviously this 40,000 is a small sum of money, and the sum of money of 13,000 is relatively small in the grand scheme of things. Are we adversely penalising those who are the most vulnerable in our society within this directorate? Because I know other directorates are protecting the most vulnerable in our society. Are we adversely penalising them within this with budget cuts? And then I do have a second question. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Could you mind if I answer that one, because that is a political question rather, it's a strategy.
Yes,
I
noticed your hand was up, Councillor Gebby. Thank you.
And what I would say is no, that I don't think we are disadvantaging those that are more vulnerable. If you look at all our neighbouring authorities, people with a blue badge already pay for their parking and have done for a significant number of years. So no, I don't think we are doing that. People with a blue badge quite often have attendance allowance or PIP if they're of working age. Part of that payment is for them to facilitate them in their independence, and that's exactly what they're doing. So no, I don't think we are. Thank you very much, Chair, and Councillor Bledsoe for the question.
Thank you very much. Janine, would you like to add anything?
Not really, Chair. I was going to say much along the same lines as Councillor Gebby has said. It's not the blue badge piece and the shop mobility piece are not statutory services. Unfortunately, they're not delivered by any other LA in Wales. So we're at that position, Councillor Bledsoe, where we have to make some very, very difficult decisions and stop providing those services. I mean, this is just the start of what we will have to do in order to balance the budgets here. It's not a position we want to be in. But unfortunately, it's the environment we're operating in.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that. Because, I mean, obviously, we look at home to school transport and that's not statutory. And this isn't statutory, but one of them's being cut. So, I think the residents do have a fair question there to ask. Right. So on to my second question, which is page 31, please. So it's under corporate landlord, and it says it was reported at Q1 that there was already an underlying shortfall in income at Bridgend Market of 100,000, which has increased to 198,000 at Q2. So that's £98,000 extra. Due to the identification of reinforced autoclave aerated concrete and the closure of the market at the end of September. So the implication there is that it's actually cheaper to close the market and not have it open and running because of the losses incurred. they seem to be less within these figures that BCBC are putting out by £2,000 in the second quarter. Now, I've had a letter from the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, and he said, our position on the responsibilities for RAC is clear. Owners and landlords are responsible for building safety and for the responsibility of employees, tenants, pupils and members of the public who use their estate. Responsibility for the identification, management and any remediation works lies within the council, as does any compensation to the tenants under any commercial agreements in place. So, I mean, my question is the market safe? Are we going to see the reopening of the market? Do we have sufficient budget to be able to do the remediation work that the First Minister expects us to do? And when would we be able to do that? Because I know the question was already asked by Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, that it's not in the budget lines, and I understand why it's not for this year with the survey not yet being done. However, we have paid for that survey. We are in the queue for that survey. We just haven't got a date for that survey. So I would expect that date to be forthcoming shortly. And we have now gone into somewhat of that period that we were told it would be done. So my question is, are we going to be a market town without a market? And if so, for how long, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. I know Mark would like to come in first, and then I'll bring in Janine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe, for the question, and thank you, Chair. I will try and answer that as comprehensively as I can, because I think it's a really important question. I think we're in the phase at the moment, and I think I explained this to local members when we met, where we need to be informed, don't we, by the detailed surveys, which will give us an indication of the extent of the RAC, but more importantly, what it might entail and what it might cost to either repair or replace the deteriorating concrete. At that point, when that is complete, the council will then have a number of options and of course a decision to make in terms of its prioritisation within its capital programme. So again, the risk of running into capital, the capital programme is also under huge pressure, but ultimately that will be a choice. That will be about priorities. So the answer to the question is, I suppose, in sequence and in phases. First of all, we need to have the additional work and the report from the additional work to inform us. When we have that, there's then a process that will determine where that would sit within the capital priorities. In the best case scenario, the repairs, and let's hope it's repairs rather than replacement. In the best case scenario, we will be able to commit to repairing the market and opening it as soon as possible. Though I'm not technically qualified to tell you how quickly that could be done, but hopefully reasonably quickly. That would be the best case scenario. But I think, in order to be honest and open, the worst case scenario, and we've seen recently, haven't we, in St David's Hall in Cardiff, where their detailed survey came back and effectively they decided to close St David's Hall for, I think, about 18 months or so, where they have to replace the roof. And I suppose that's the stage we need to get to, where we're better informed by the detail. But I think all of our hope, our sincere hope, would be that the extent of the repairs would mean that we could carry them out and repair the building as soon as possible. But ultimately, I'm in your hands as members as well, because you obviously set and agree the capital programme.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark. Janine, would you like to add anything? Or Mark has comprehensively answered that, hasn't he?
Well, yes, only just to say, though, Councillor Bledsoe, that the market has never broke even in terms of revenue. The council has subsidised the market for years in terms of the rental from the stores there. So this isn't, yes, there is a change in there because we've had to close the market, and Mark's given you an answer on that. But I'm afraid the council has subsidised that market for some time.
And that's my concern. Sorry, Chair, if I may come back. That is my concern. That's the traders' concern within the market, and it's the residents' wider concern that it has been subsidised for a long time, and that now this is an opportunity to close the market under the guise of it's too expensive. And I'd just like to seek assurances that that isn't going to be the case from the council, please.
Well, I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that's the case at all, Councillor Bledsoe. We're working tirelessly to try and get those people relocated. But importantly for us, it's health and safety comes above everything. And the mandate is that we had to close that building. So until we can be assured it's safe, we won't be going anywhere, but we are trying to relocate those traders as quickly as possible to get them up and trading, especially now in the period before Christmas. So I don't know whether my cabinet members want to come in and give you additional reassurances, but from our point of view, absolutely, we want to see a market.
I'm happy to hear that, yeah, please, and I think the residents would be. Thank you.
Can I just note, I appreciate there are many different issues across the whole council which we could discuss today, but this is the revenue outturn report for Q2, and I'm conscious of the time which is taken. I will invite Councillor Spanswick to come in, and then I think we'll move progress and bring in Councillor Granville for a final question on communities, and then we'll move to the very important area of social services. Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm only briefly to say it's so disappointing to hear the accusation that we may be looking to close the market into the guise of the rack, rather than
it's not an accusation, to be clear, it's a question.
Can we maintain
work that's been done?
Stop, please.
Okay,
Can we
but it should be
stop,
thanks to the officers for the excellent work
stop,
that's been done.
please stop, otherwise you'll have to mute people.
I didn't, but
this meeting is getting out of control now. From the very start, we've had people butting in over the chair. There's hardly any point to me being here at this rate. So please, let's maintain some order of the meeting. Okay, I'm moving progress now. Councillor Granville.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just for some clarification from Janine, if I may, Chair. Contracts. I have never seen a contract, Janine, but could you tell me, when we issue a contract, a large contract, not a small contract, a large contract, like my stake or whatever we're going to do now in Call, have we got financial penalties and time penalties put in clauses on these? So if a contractor does go over, it's their responsibility for both, especially financial, as Councillor Good has said earlier in his statement. You know what I mean? We need to be careful how we word these things, and it's done in the public realm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Janine, would you like to take that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, the simple answer, Councillor Granville, it depends what form of contract it is. We issue lots of different forms of contract. Some yes, some no. The reason being is we have something called an NEC contract, which is a design and build contract, where you go in with an open book and you work alongside the contractor. And yes, there can be penalties by law, but there's penalties on both sides. There's penalties on us if we don't release information, and penalties on the contractor if they don't deliver. So the simple answer really is yes, but it also depends on the form of contract we're engaging in. So I hope that answers.
Thank you. Councillor Granville, you content?
I am, Chair, but have we then, Janine, just to clarify from my own point of view, and perhaps other members, have we had any financial implications and authority for not giving appropriate discussions or information to partners relating to a contract?
No, not at this stage, Councillor Granville.
So as it turned the other way, have we fined or done something to a contractor so we have extra penalties off them for running over or not doing what they should have done?
Well, I've been here 3 years and I'm not aware of any contracts since my tenure we've done that in, because we normally try and have a negotiated position to get the contract finished. So, I mean, because it gets very litigious if we start implementing and then things don't normally go. So unless it was enormous and a showstopper, we wouldn't generally. We would try and get a negotiated position and complete the contract. But we're not afraid to use that clause if that's what you're asking. And we would if we thought it was appropriate.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Janine. Your an hour and a quarter grilling has been complete, and we now move to Social Services Directorate. Good luck, Claire and Jane. We move now to Social Services Directorate, and I'll invite Councillor Gebby and Claire to make some opening remarks to set the scene for this directorate.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'd like to draw members' attention, because I actually went through your previous minutes, Chair, and I think that would be really useful today, because I'm only going to reiterate some of the points that I've already made previously. So if I take you back to page 4, social services and wellbeing, the reliance on and the cost of agency workers to meet statutory duties and the impact of continuity on families, overspend and waiting times for disabled facility grants, capacity in care homes and the cost of care for elderly residents, the demographic and impact of demand, sufficiency of service provisions, estimated future budget pressures, remodelling of day services for older people and learning disability services, and remodelling. I know that Scrutiny already have one remodelling already scheduled for November, I believe, off the top of my head. And all those points I've just taken from the 3rd of July, your corporate overview and Scrutiny committee. If I then take members on to Monday, the 24th of July, and we talk about the exponential increase in quantum and complexity of demand. And if I take you on to page 11, we talk about the trend in management and number of children on the Child Protection Register, the cost of agency staff, placement sufficiency, and then registered placements. And I could go on, Chair, and I could go back through your minutes for many months and do that. So I think what I need to relay to members really here is that we have to operate above our funded establishment in order that we keep children and adults safe. And we also need to keep all our caseloads at an appropriate level. I think one of the things that I would highlight, just one independent placement for a young person is £6,000 a week. That's £312,000 a year per young person. So I think we need to put this into context, some of the things that we are talking about. We already know that we've got demands on our residential care. We know that we need to reduce independent residential placements, which is one of the reasons why we were so keen on opening our new Bryn Menin Children's Hub. And we expect that to bring down some of the costs of our independent placements. We also know that we've got pressures on older persons services. We've got an ageing demographic here in Bridgend. We don't know where we're going to get workforce from in future years because they're all going to be too old to deliver any sort of service. And I put all of us in that capacity as well, all of us on this call today. So we know that we've got continued demand. And we also know that we've got considerable unmet need currently in hospitals and sitting at home waiting for packages of care. But also, I think what I want to stress, and it's something that I'll link back to previous comments, in Bridgend, adults, older person services is the lowest funded per head of population in Wales. So, you know, I think that just gives you some context about where we are. And I just think we're so robust in social services. I think our Scrutiny Committee is as well. We are more than happy to have this discussion openly. But I just don't want to rehearse all the things that we're saying. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And I am sure that Claire would wish to make a contribution as well, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbie. Claire, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Deputy Leader, because I think she said much of what I would have said in terms of my introductory remarks. I think first to reflect the impact on the whole council of the position that we find ourselves in terms of social services in Bridgend. And I think it was Councillor Griffiths some hours ago now commented that it's perhaps not helpful to talk about what's going on elsewhere when we're looking at our own position, but it is the case, isn't it, that social services spend across Wales is at a significant level and is impacting on the ability of local authorities to meet all other statutory and non-statutory duties. Just in terms of the statutory comment, obviously our statutory duties under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act are to assess and meet eligible need. It doesn't determine how you meet that need, but once you've assessed need and determined eligibility, then there is a requirement to meet need. And we do, and to provide assurance to Scrutiny, we do endeavour to do that in the most cost-effective way. And over many years, I think there's been quite a lot of innovation and creativity around that. Councillor Gebbie has referenced developing the in-house provision at Bryn Menin. That was planned considerably before the Welsh Government's policy intent around eliminating profit. So I think it shows an example really where Bridgend is ahead of the game in terms of those sorts of developments. However, the last number of years have been incredibly challenging. And as Councillor Gebbie has already set out, in children's social care, we've seen that exponential increase in demand coming through the front door. That continues to be the case into the first 2 quarters of this financial year. What we need to ensure is that we've got sufficiency of workforce to meet that demand in a way that enables us to be in the best possible position to retain and to recruit social workers, which means that we have to keep caseloads at a reasonable level, which we are absolutely committed to do. And that's the reason why we're operating above establishment and are dependent on agency workforce. We have been making good progress in some of our areas to address the gaps in terms of vacancies, through both our international recruitment and our Grow Our Own service in terms of developing our own social workers of the future. What I would say is, though, that some of that is funded through earmarked reserves, which I think that the Deputy Leader has already referred to. So we've got some of these underlying budget pressures as we move forward. In terms of being in a better position going forward and the quality of our financial and service planning, we obviously brought to Cabinet and then went through to Council a sustainability plan, which was considered at September Council and approved. And that's based on very detailed analysis, because we didn't just want to recommend to you that we lurch from crisis to crisis. We wanted to put in that sustainability plan. In terms of adult services, the issues are slightly different. We've got different issues, I would say, between the different population groups. Councillor Gebbie has already referred to a plan around the transformation of learning disability services, and that's from both a social work and a commissioning perspective, which will be considered by Scrutiny. I think it's the 23rd of November. In our older person services, this is a very pressured part of what we do. And that pressure translates itself into unmet need at any point in time. But we do reinforce to those who are assessing and meeting need to always do that in the most proportionate way. The right thing to do is invariably the most cost-effective thing to do as well, which is why we've got priorities such as regrowing our reablement service, because if you reable somebody, they both retain and regain their independence, and they need less ongoing care and support as well. But it is a pressured area of the council. And just finally, just to reference, and I know Councillor farted earlier, that there is an underspent area of the Directorate, our prevention and wellbeing area, heavily grant dependent, as Councillor Farr said, but because we've got those good long-term partnership arrangements with Halo and Arwen for the leisure and cultural trust, that places us in a good position. Though considerable savings have been made over the years through those partnership arrangements, and hopefully, we can continue to make efficiency through those parts of the budget as well. So I pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Councillor Gebbie and Claire for being such advocates for social services within our local authority. I don't know how you sleep at night sometimes, but just to say, is this situation sustainable? Surely, I know Welsh Government are not exactly flush with money, but surely it's time for, this is a high-level political statement, but surely it's high time for central government intervention in social services, because currently local authorities simply can't sustain the level of demand. Just one other comment from me before I bring in Councillor Bennett. And Councillor Gebbie to respond, of course, because it's a political comment. I know that demand is unpredictable, but with regards to the budget growth of 8.174 million, which was approved by Council for 23-24, and then now the current projection showing a 12.69 million overspend, compared with 11.065 million a Q1. This is not meant to sound uncharitable, but how do we get things perhaps so wrong? Is demand so unpredictable that we can't have robust modelling and data analysis to assess the potential demand, and therefore be better able to predict the budget required to support the demand? It's kind of going back to what Councillor Griffiths said earlier on. Shouldn't we have had a better handle on what the demand was going to be to ensure that we were better prepared, so we didn't have a £12 million overspend? So I hope you don't feel that is overly critical, but perhaps we should have thought about the potential increase in demand while setting that potential budget growth at the very beginning of the financial year. So I'll bring in Councillor Gebbie and then Claire.
So what I would say politically is you'll be aware that this wasn't my portfolio, nor was it Claire's. Indeed, we both worked for different local authorities when these budget arrangements were set up. We are aware, as all members are, of the devastating set of circumstances in relation to particular incidents that have occurred in Bridgend. We always know that that will make our partners less risk averse, which means that they will indeed direct people appropriately sometimes, or not always at other times, into our services, but you would expect us to manage that as we do. We've had demand on our services that have not been, core budget arrangements have not been made around social services for many, many years here in Bridgend. So that's what I'm putting out there. Do I think we could have done anything slightly differently? I think we should have reprofiled our budget differently last year. That's one of the first, and I'm going to make my other cabinet members exceptionally unhappy that I'm making that statement here in a public forum. But I do think we need to have a look at all of this. And, you know, I'm just thinking back to what we have to provide and previous contributions in other directorates. Actually, some things are statutory, some things aren't. I think we need to be very, very careful about what we're spending our money on. And I do think we need to consider how we're going to do that. I think every council in Wales, considering the pandemic, you know, one of the reasons that we reflect on the pandemic in social services is because we've got an increase in people now that have a considered disability and require our support. But I'll reflect again that I think we need to have a different conversation with our residents. What is it that you actually want us to provide? Don't expect us to do everything, and it's only when there's an actual need and not a want that we need to interfere and support. And I think there's a wider conversation about what we do as communities and how we support each other in our communities. You'll have much better outcomes for people if they're supported in their communities rather than statutory services. I would much prefer to be in a position where we're spending all of social services budget on before they even get to statutory. So all previous interventions. So the earlier we can intervene with people, whether that's children or adults, the better outcomes we will have. So I'll give you an example as an older person. As an older person, if I can get them some, it may be some minor adaptations to keep them at home, and it might just be grab rails getting in and out of their house. That means we can keep them at home. That's much better. Unfortunately, when it comes to packages of care, we're limited to £100 a week that we can reclaim. And quite often keeping people at home means more that we pay more for a package of care than we do for a residential placement for them. So in which case we can charge them more for, you know, the whole placement. So I think we need to have a different conversation. Politically, it's something that we've asked Welsh Government to have a look at. If they are saying people are better off at home and that's the policy direction they want to go in, that's fine, but we need to charge people appropriately for the packages of care, even though what we're saying, and Welsh Government is saying, that their direction of travel for all care should be free at the point of need, which is fine, but I think we need some parity around whether it's residential or staying at home in the interim. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gebbie, for that refreshingly honest appraisal of where we're at. Claire, please.
Yeah, so just to pick up, Chair, the point about planning and how we can predict. I think, as Councillor Gebbie has alluded to, there were some events in Bridgend which were unpredictable. But what we've done, and refer you back to the report that you considered as council, is to look at the evidence and data both locally but also nationally about what that does to demand into services when those sorts of hopefully very, very rare tragic events occur. And some of what we've done is to benchmark with authorities such as Bradford, but probably more significantly Solihull, and what that does in terms of demand over a period of time. And obviously that work has been fed in now to you as a council, and will be part of your considerations in terms of budget setting going forward. In terms of other areas of social services, we do have a very detailed population needs assessment, which has been developed by the Regional Partnership Board, that identified that for all population groups without exception, that the COVID-19 pandemic had a considerable impact on their health and well-being and their need to access services. We know there have been delays in people being able to access NHS treatments. We know that people who were shielding or very nervous to leave their homes for long periods of time have deconditioned in terms of their physical and mental health. And all of that is impacting on not just the numbers coming through, but also then the complexity of need of those coming through and requiring services. Prior to the pandemic, I think there'd been quite a lot of success in managing social services in a very cost-effective way since the Social Services and Wellbeing Act came in, albeit a lot of that was underpinned for a long period of time by specific grants, and some of those grants have ceased to be available to us. It's a very difficult set of conversations. If you look at the annual reports, which I've brought to council, and I've done 3 now, they've always highlighted not just the local position in terms of the resource requirements based on the prediction of need, but how that places us in the context of the information which the Welsh Local Government Association submits to Welsh Government. Those are difficult messages to give when there are so many other priorities for the council and so many other priorities in terms of the corporate plan, which is, you know, but it is my statutory duty to advise you of those matters. I think from a professional perspective, you know, we as directors of social services will be saying where is the work around paying for care in Wales, you know, and the future funding of social services. Obviously, you know, we work in very, very close partnership with our colleagues in the NHS, and we see the challenges they've got in terms of their budget position. But health and social care go hand in hand, and you can't resource one part of the system without the other. The whole system will still continue to struggle. So yes, I think we've got the plans. It's not palatable reading, particularly given our growing and ageing population and the impact of pandemic. But everything that we're doing is to continue to do the very utmost that we can to work in as preventative a way as possible and free for those people with care and support needs to prevent the escalation of those needs to the next level.
Great, thanks so much, Claire, for the comprehensive response. Now move to Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. So we know costs are escalating for reasons noted in the report, but I note the per head cost of some of these services, such as those noted on page 27 for mental health residential care. They seem to be resulting in huge budget swings. I mean, indeed, I think that mental health cost is something like 250,000 for 3 mental health placements there. And Councillor Gebby's just mentioned that the 312,000 per young person residential care. Councillor Gebby, also, I think you mentioned that we're at the lowest spend per head in Wales for older people. And I'm interested in finding out how are our overall figures, I guess, in terms of demand and finance in comparison to other local authorities. Do we have any formal benchmarking, and do we do that regularly? I know you've mentioned WRGA. My next question was going to be about Welsh Government and what representation we're making, but you've already touched on that. And I've got 2 further very quick questions, Chair, that I'll come back on if that's all right. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Claire?
Did Councillor Gebby want to come in first?
Sorry, Councillor Gebby.
No, that's fine, Chair. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Bennett. I suppose what I would say is that I am privy to some benchmarking arrangements. I don't think all that data is in the public domain as yet. I would suggest that it's going to corporate overview and scrutiny, or another scrutiny, potentially even BREP. I would ask Harris to have that benchmarking data arranged for you. The WLGA are very good at representing our concerns, and indeed last week as Cabinet members we all met with Eleanor Morgan, the Health Minister. I think the one thing that I would say is it doesn't appear that some of the representations that residents are making to us in relation to difficulties, contacting GPs, getting into health provision rather than local authority provision, it doesn't appear to be making an impact. And I know that there are difficulties because I've got them in my caseload that I keep advising the health board of, but it doesn't appear to be making it to Welsh Government. And I think that's something we do need to pick up, because as Cabinet members across Wales, one of the things that Eleanor has asked us for is direct emails when we're raising concerns now. So it seems like some of that information is getting lost somewhere along the lines. Even our children's services spend is not the highest in Wales. Indeed, we are significantly low in relation to our comparators. And I think that's a problem because that's been going on for years. And I appreciate that everybody wants us to have this education list now about the way we spend, but that hasn't been done for years. And it's an enormous piece of work. It's an enormous financial undertaking to have that clarity around the data, but it is something that officers are picking up because we would like the same. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gebby. Claire, please.
Yeah, just to pick up on the issue that Councillor Bennett raised in terms of the cost of individual placements. I think if we're looking at where can we do things differently in the whole system, this is clearly an area of focus, and we've already referenced the development of in-house services, and in-house services certainly aren't cheap. But they are more cost effective, and that's what we need to ensure in terms of the commissioning arrangement. So for mental health placements, we fund these 50-50 with the local health board. They are usually in place for individuals who have a right to free ongoing aftercare under a particular section of the Mental Health Act, and that's seen as good practice in terms of that 50-50 funding split. What we have to make sure is that we understand what we're getting for the investment, and that we've got the right commissioners there who are able to scrutinise those costs and get best value. Also that those placements are outcome focused. So in mental health, we work to a recovery model, and that we've got the right step down then for individuals when their need for a residential placement comes to an end. And all of that again needs that whole system to work. Again, to highlight areas where we are looking to have more focus, adults of working age. We've talked about learning disabilities. Our spend there is about average for our population across Wales, but we are identifying that through more strength-based practice, through having a closer eye in terms of the level of support that individuals are getting, we can both improve the outcomes in the lives of the individuals, but also be more cost effective in those areas as well. So that will continue to be an area of focus for us.
Thank you, Claire. I'm conscious the leader has raised his hand to come in on this.
It's just to support Claire's point, and it's a question that I've asked, and it'll be an area of focus for us as Cabinet members, is on that contribution of other partners, in particular health, to the cost of care packages. As Councillor Bennett has rightly highlighted, some of these packages are incredibly expensive, they're high cost, and there's often joint funding. Now, I want to make sure that in every case where there is joint funding, that we maximise the funding that is contributed by health partners, and also then that work that Claire talked about looking at the size of those packages and how that support is delivered as well, because it is important that where there are opportunities to maximise people's independence, that we take those opportunities, because we know that in examples where that's happened, that can actually increase people's
independence. So they lead more fulfilled lives in their community, but it can also help limit the costs of those packages. So that's another important area of work for the authority going forward, and has to be an area of focus for us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. Councillor Bennett, back to you.
Thank you. My next question was on page 29 in relation to court orders. And obviously there's an impact on increasing costs there, and I guess we have no control over those really. But can you talk us through what the risks are for these costs towards the end of the year? Can we expect more? I mean, you know the caseload better than we would. Do you know if we're expecting any more of those costs?
Yeah, so thanks very much for the question, Councillor Bennett. Yeah, in terms of court orders, we have obviously an in-house legal team, but we do have to on a number of occasions, either because of capacity or complexity of the case, engage external counsel. And Kelly may wish to comment on that, but you know, we do see costs in this area in that legal budget rising. We've got an increase in cost pressure, which is referenced in the paper around the Court of Protection, as well as court orders for children and young people, which is connected to the delays that there have been at UK government level with the implementation of liberty protection safeguards. So we've got individuals waiting in the community for deprivation of liberty safeguards to be put in place, where we are restricting liberty. But if they're not in a registered care setting, that is a decision for the court of protection rather than the local authority. And these are areas as people age, as need is more complex, that are driving costs. The cost in children's services are linked into the number of children who are care experienced, and there's two areas of work there. There's also obviously the work when children become care experienced, and we've got a lot of focus on that at the moment in terms of the rates of children becoming care experienced and whether there are alternative orders that we can seek. We're also looking to discharge some orders, so to reduce the number of care experienced children, because it's safe for them to you know, return to family, or they're living with family under something called a placement with parents order, and that requires us to go into court for a discharge of order. So all of this contributes to those legal costs, and I would say is an area that I would anticipate isn't going to reduce, and probably would continue to be a pressure for the right reasons, in terms of getting the right safeguards, and also on occasion to discharge orders as well.
Thank you very much, Claire. Councillor Bennett, you can then.
Thank you. Before I go on to my last question, which will be a really simple one, it just strikes me that there are some seriously complex issues driving these costs, and we really need to be clear in our comms with any sort of public consultation around the budget that comes up towards the end of the year. Is there anything we can do, Chair, to recommend something around how we communicate these pressures in a much more kind of easy to access for the general public, you know, in terms of information, because what we're discussing here is just massively complex, isn't it? And people won't be understanding these pressures, and these costs per head, for example, are just astronomical, aren't they? And as I haven't even appreciated, some of these costs were being paid by health as well, so actually that's 50% of the costs, isn't it, there? So yeah, I think we need to be doing some recommendations around comms. My last question, which was really a simple one, on page 26 we talk about learning day opportunity vehicles, and that we've got some small increase in costs there because we're leasing temporary vehicles. Do we know when we will receive these vehicles that we've ordered? Thank you. And that's me done then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Claire, would you like to answer that final question before I bring in Councillor Gebbie?
I don't know when they're going to arrive, but they have been on order for 18 months, and this is a worldwide supply issue, which yeah is again impacting across the council. But yeah, it's indicative, isn't it, of the challenges we face, that even something simple you would think like ordering a vehicle now is incurring significant additional costs.
Thanks, Claire. Councillor Gebbie.
So thanks very much, Chair. It was just to give an example, really. For obvious reasons, I'm not operational. However, as Chair of Governors, I'm made aware of all safeguarding concerns. And in the past year alone, I've gone from 2 to 30 concerns in my own school. And each one of those needs to have an officer that's in charge of the case, an administrator that does all the work. You've got a legal officer in the background. You'll also have police, and then you've got the head. So the impact on schools around some of this demand is very evident. And I think it was just to make the point, really, that we can see it, even external to the council, the amount of demand on our services. And I think it was just to evidence that at that point and give a living example, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. I move now to Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I start, can I just say on a personal level, because obviously I chair the scrutiny, so I get to see an awful lot of what Councillor Gebby and Claire Marchant are putting in place. And I just want to say a big thank you to the both of them. And perhaps it's not politically correct for me to say thank you to Councillor Gebby. However, the pair of them are working exceedingly hard under really difficult circumstances and have been for a long time at the head of their teams. And I know that they are putting in place an awful lot to bring down these budgets as well, which perhaps goes unseen by quite a lot of the public and the councillors here. So I just wanted to note that and to give my thanks to them for that, because it is hard work and it does go unthanked an awful lot of the time. Secondly, can I support Councillor Bennett's request that we put in place some comms around what goes on, because I think that will be helpful both to my scrutiny committee as well as here, because it gives that crystallisation of what our cost pressures are here, and they are significant, to be honest. So I'd welcome that. And then finally, onto my question. Sorry, Chair. So page 28, I notice that it says that there's currently 27 care experienced children out of authority on placements. I just wondered what we were doing to bring that figure down, because obviously it goes on to say that it's risen quite significantly. I know that we have got a new children's home that's come online, and I wondered where we were with placements in there and whether we're able to put some of these children in there, how many children we've got in there at the moment, whatever it is, you know, and if it's full at the moment, if we're able to then look at different units that we could bring online as well to turn into children's homes that are suitable, and maybe that might help to bring down that pressure a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bledsoe. Claire?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to Councillor Bledsoe for those kind words. They are appreciated. In terms of the out of area placements, we're obviously doing a lot. There's been a remodelling residential programme in Bridgend for a number of years, and in addition to the assessment unit, which has recently opened, we've got one bespoke individual placement. We've got our long-term care home for children as well, and we've got this disability respite and a long-term disability home. So, you know, we are looking at developing more. We've got a capital investment plan which has been signed off by the Regional Partnership Board, which does identify the need for more and more that we need to do as well on a regional basis, because one of the challenges with children's residential homes is around the match between the children, so the compatibility of different children with each other living in that home, and that's got to be really, really carefully managed. And responsible individuals, we employ our own here in Bridgend, have to take a very strong line, because they get into a lot of regulatory trouble if they accept children who aren't compatible with each other and cause safeguarding issues. In terms of those who are out of area, they're obviously reviewed very, very regularly in terms of whether that placement is meeting need. And I would say a bit of a degree of caution in terms of bringing them back, because if they're settled in placement and doing well, it would be the wrong thing for that child to move them, and unless it was in their best interest to do so. What I would say, alongside all the work around remodelling residential that we are seeking to do, is to continue to grow our foster carer cohort as well. That's been one of the challenges, and one of the reasons really that we've seen that increase in residential is that we see an increasing number of children and young people whose care plan will be for both residential and fostering. And we challenge that and say, well, surely it's fostering first, but social workers now understand it's so challenging to secure a foster placement, particularly perhaps for a teenager with teenage behaviours, if I put it that way, that they start the search for a residential placement at the same time. So that real focus on our foster carers and also the support for our foster carers. So we've been fortunate in that we've got from Welsh Government some significant investment under the eliminating profit policy agenda, short-term investment over a couple of years, but we are looking to put a lot more support both in terms of residential and our foster carers around that. Final part of the question, Councillor Betso, was around the occupancy in the new care home. It's still the one at the moment, but there are plans in terms of potential placement breakdowns for children, for another 2 to move in a very managed way. And the positive for us is that next time we get an emergency, which does happen very regularly, usually on a Friday evening, the emergency beds are now staffed. So we've still got adverts out there. We're still, moving towards full staffing, but that will make a huge difference in not having to make an unregulated placement in an emergency.
Thank you very much, Claire. Content, Councillor Blesso, yeah.
Yeah, can I just very quickly come back? I know you've said that you've got another 2 that are coming in a managed process. What does that managed process look like, please?
It involves both assessments in terms of the social workers really getting to know the child, but also critically that the staff within the residential provision get to know the child before they move in. And it's then done in a planned way, not a crisis way in terms of that move. It's also then, Councillor Brett, so in terms of the timing, because if you take 2 children into that assessment unit and for up to a year, the assessment side, on the same weekend, you're likely to have far more issues than if you're able to manage those admissions child by child.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. I'm content. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you very much. I've got 3 questions, but they should have quite straightforward answers. Firstly, the report says about the underspend on independent fostering agencies has increased to 462,000, but then the overspend in guardianship orders has also increased then to 356,000. So you're sort of underspending with one and overspending in the other. I just wondered if you think that the guardianship orders are going to increase the overspend as we go along. Thanks, that's the first question.
Thank you. Councillor Gebby. Sorry, Claire.
No, it's fine, Claire. I think one of the things that I would say is it all depends on each individual family. Because if a family goes into crisis and they don't have anybody suitable to take on that caring arrangement, then we're not going to give them any special guardianship order, I think is what I would like to say. And the underspend in fostering arrangements is only because we can't recruit fast enough to have the places available for our children. I think the other thing that I would advise members of is that currently foster carers, unless they go through an assessment process, only get a kinship allowance, it's called. If they go through a foster care arrangement and they go through the whole process for assessment, they can actually claim a foster carer's allowance, which means that they're also able to assist us, because many foster carers out there are able to give us placements last minute. They're able to take additional children, if we put a call out. So I think that's something, and I would prefer every young person in the county borough to be in a family unit rather than to be in a residential placement. Whilst we've opened the Bryn Melyn Hub, the reality for me is that once they've done their assessment and we've identified the best placement for them, they should be out of there and in a family rather than in any independent care arrangement. I'm not sure how else to answer other than we need to recruit. But I think the one thing I would advise all members, if we can actually recruit to the sufficient standard for the demand on provision, we're actually still going to be in an overspend position, because we are going to have to pay for those placements and make those payments. So, I think that's something we all need to be considerate of when we're setting future budgets. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Gebby. Claire, would you like to add anything?
I think Councillor Gebby has answered very comprehensively. Great,
thank you, Claire. Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much, and that leads me on nicely to my next one, which is about recruitment and retention of staff. So it talks about, throughout the report, about agency staff and recruitment issues. Two parts to this. How is staff retention when we're bringing in agency staff? Because I know people are always saying that agency staff can earn more money than a full-time member of staff. So how are we seeing some of our staff moving towards the agency route themselves because they can earn more money? And then when you come to the international recruitment, do we then need to pay for housing for them and obviously furniture and everything? Because if you're bringing somebody internationally, they're not going to have set up here. And likewise, if we're using agency staff from other parts of the UK, do we then have to pay for their residential costs as well if they're coming down here? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Claire, please.
Yeah, so thanks for the questions. In terms of agency, I'm pleased to report actually that we've got a more stable position. So we did see a lot of staff, both in this authority and other authorities, move to agency because the rates being paid were so much in excess of what they could earn. Even when you took into account all the pension contributions and sick pay and everything else, the agency rates were in excess of what they could earn working for a local authority. So we did see that. We've done a piece of work across Wales as directors of social services and developed something called a memorandum of cooperation, which sets now standard rates in terms of what we pay agency, and we've seen considerably less movement between of agency staff between local authorities, because some of them are paid higher at the moment than the standard rate, so they're not going to move because then they get paid lower. And what that memorandum of cooperation also does is commit local authorities not to take on any agency member of staff who has only left their local authority permanent contract within the last 6 months. So that has really slowed things down, and it is a really good position at the moment. In terms of staff moving, be it either from overseas or other parts of the UK or Wales, the same policy applies as for anybody moving to a job with the council, in that we've got a relocation policy as a council, which gives individuals the right to claim. It's not an automatic grant, but the right to claim up to £8,000 relocation expenses. It's not a new policy that's been brought in for this. It's a long-standing policy. We did in establishing the earmarked reserve for international recruitment assumed they were all going to apply for the full 8,000, but actually they haven't. So that EMR is slightly underspent as well. So that's a positive from that perspective.
Thanks, Claire. Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much. My final question is on learning disabilities home care. So in the report, it says about the difference in cost, and it costs more for somebody coming in, I think, overnight rather than staying overnight with them. And then it says slightly improved due to someone moving into residential care. So I wondered, throughout the report, we're saying keep people at home, it costs us less. Is this different for learning disabilities? And we would save money if they went into a residential setting, but then obviously we wouldn't have that many residential settings, I would have thought anyway, to be able to house people. And then from that, are we also seeing an increased number coming into the service? Because you wouldn't all necessarily know some of these individuals exist if they've got a family surrounding them, supporting them, until there's a family crisis or something goes wrong, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody who you've not known about, who could be 30, 40, 50 years old, and you're having to then pick up the pieces, so to speak. And I'm assuming that will cost a lot more as well, because they haven't had that support before. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Claire, please.
Yeah, so in general terms, it's more cost effective for an individual to be in supported living than in a residential care home. In terms of the council's budget, the overall cost to the public purse may be more, but that's because the individual is a tenant in their own right and can claim housing benefit for their rent. So that means in terms of the cost of the accommodation, that's not something that the council picks up in terms of the social services budget as part of the council. It's also invariably the right thing to do, because as a tenant, an individual has rights. They've got access to money and benefits that they wouldn't have if they were in residential care. So it gives them far more freedom and ability to live the life that they want to live. In terms of the cost drivers there, what we've seen during the pandemic and afterwards is an increase in costs, particularly around overnight wakeful nights, and this is a real focus for us in terms of the transformation programme we're taking forward. Are we maximising assistive technology such as, it's called Just Check-In, in terms of support for individuals overnight, as there's been an element of over support, particularly in those hours that has crept in. So that's a real focus for us at the moment. In terms of the second part of the question, yes, what we see in terms of the adult services budgets is 2 points of transition. So obviously transition when young people become adults and move from children's services into adult services, and that's quite predictable in terms of that demand, because we've usually known about that young person, throughout their childhood. But the other point of transition is more difficult to plan for, because we've got carers in their 70s, 80s, sometimes into their 90s, and the adult with learning disability has been living quite happily, and then that parent may go into hospital, they might experience a health crisis, be unable to continue with their caring responsibilities, and that's another time when adults transition into needing further care and support for ourselves. Again, we are fortunate in Bridgend that we've got emergency placements in our breakaway service, so lots of authorities won't have this, so we do have that ability through those emergency beds to make sure that we support people in that timely way. But then when you're looking at that prediction of demand, there will be people who are very well known to us but have been living with parents and carers, and others who just haven't been known to us, and that's something else which difficult to plan for, but you have to make some assumptions around in terms of your budget planning. What I would say around, I suppose, all of these areas is that there's always been pressures, I suppose, in social services budgets and other council budgets around the demographics that we're facing, and those have been based in terms of a range of assumptions and actual knowledge around the populations that we're working with. It's one of those areas that if you don't fund the demographics when you set the budget as a council, as these new elements of need come forward, people are living longer, even with a range of disabilities, with the medical advances that we see. We're a growing population as a county borough anyway. That places that additional pressure, doesn't it, in terms of budgets.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Williams, you contend?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Gebby and Claire, for fielding those questions. We're now going to move to the Chief Executive's Directorate. And perhaps, Mark, you can just briefly outline the context of your own directorate.
Happy to do that, Chair. Though obviously, if relevant cabinet members want to come in, then please do so. Obviously, in terms of the overall revenue budget for chief executives, we're forecasting about a $250,000 overspend. Predominant issues there are around about a £750,000 overspend on legal. We've heard a little bit already about the quantum and the complexity of cases coming through with children's services, so that's very significant in this regard. Kelly may want to add something in due course about that. That's offset, and there's also, an additional overspend on ICT. Those coming down from Q1, so that's heading in the right direction. That's offset to some extent, but this is slightly counterintuitive. It's offset to some extent by an underspend on housing and homelessness of just over £500,000. That's despite there being unprecedented demand on homelessness, and the reasons for that are twofold. First of all, we effectively preemptively put additional money into the budget around about 2 years ago, I think. But subsequently, there's been significant levels of Welsh Government grant for this purpose. The bad news is all the indications is that grant will end this year, so it's not really £500,000 of saving that we can take moving forward. We anticipate that we'll need every bit of that £500,000 and more, unfortunately, in view of the demand for homelessness in particular. So they're the key issues. I think very briefly, Chair, just probably a few things to mention about the directorate and its characteristics. So more so than the other directorate, about 90% of the directorate spend is on staffing. You might expect that because most of the services are predominantly support services, whether that's HR, legal, ICT, finance. I think the difficulty, and this probably plays to a point that's been made a couple of times this morning, I think the difficulty with that is that the tendency is to say, well, we need to make all our savings, don't we, from back office, or we need to look at the back office to find savings. And I think other directors would say to you that the problem with that is that they very quickly notice if the HR support or the legal support or the finance support isn't there, and we need to recognise that those back office services have had significant cuts over the years. That said, I talked earlier, didn't I, about needing to prioritise and needing to focus very carefully. So we're certainly not immune to that. There are two particular frontline services that are important as well. I've mentioned housing and homelessness. The other probably is the shared regulatory service as well. But of course, the reality is that all of these services, as I'm sure every director would say, are carrying out very important roles as well. So hopefully that gives you the overview. I'm conscious of time, Chair, so I'm trying not to prolong it too long, but hopefully that gives you the key highlights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We're only 3.5 hours into the meeting, so it's quite a short one for us. Councillor Williams, please.
Yes, so the significant area, obviously, and which I have responsibility for, or oversight of, rather than responsibility, should I say, and that's the legal, democratic, and regulatory services. And as has been highlighted, you know, we have had some very complex children's cases which have needed King's Counsel to help us get through, and it's very difficult to predict the demand on that service. And I'm just going to briefly touch on, you know, last year setting a budget, we were faced with significant pressures from directorates, from directors and the chief executive, in fairness. And as you would expect, the cabinet pushed very hard back on those pressures. And, you know, probably with hindsight, we could have done something different. But I must remind members the balancing figure is council tax. And so, no, we can push back on pressures, and that's fine. And we will still continue to push back on pressures as long as we understand the consequences of that. But, you know, just have a mind for where the balancing figure will land. So, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. But Councillor Good would like to come in first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to sort of highlight, as Mark has said, the homelessness and housing situation. I think, you know, Mark's mentioned that we are anticipating that the grant funding that we currently have will drop off, and therefore the increase in budget that we put in place 2 years ago will then be required. It's also noted that obviously the demand for housing has increased quite significantly since that increase in the base budget. So it is something that we need to be very aware of going forward. Mark also mentioned shared regulatory services. Shared regulatory services, I think, do an amazing job for a very quite a small amount of funding from each borough. They are experiencing pressures in that, though, and that has been highlighted by Helen Picton to me in our regular meetings. Having said that, they are doing quite a positive job of how they use their funds to make sure that they are covering things off. But they are flagging that obviously with limits in staffing and budget, they will sort of face decisions about where they put that resource going forward. So, for example, there's been a lot of work done over the last 2 years to clear a backlog of hygiene certificate visits from, you know, many restaurants, etc., that opened during COVID, and that is something they've done really great work on achieving, actually, and they're now back within their targets. But that is something that, again, then they're sort of notifying us that as extra work comes in, such as work around enforcement of illegal vapes, which is a massive issue at the moment, that they are facing those pressures as well. So I just wanted to flag that for you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. We'll now move to questions from members, and that's Councillor Martin Hughes first.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just following up on Councillor Good's report on regulatory services, and there's an overspend of 145k, and the report picks up that some fees are not being recouped, particularly in relation to taxi licensing. If I could have a response to that question, and also on the same section about environmental health work that I think we're all aware as members that quite a considerable amount of work has to be done in default, and sometimes there are charges put on properties, which means that the monies won't be forthcoming for might be many years. I'm just wondering if there's a tally kept of that money that will eventually come back to us, and if we could have an indication of how that's mounted up and how it's repaid back to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Conscious that Kelly Watson would like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to pick up on some of those SRS points. So in terms of the fees, what we have found this year in particular is the taxi licensing. There are less people becoming registered as taxi drivers and therefore licensing themselves or their vehicles. But equally, there's been a change in the legislation. So now taxi drivers only have to have a license. Their license now runs for 3 years, whereas previously it was they had to renew it annually. So that's an indication of why there's some change there. That is a rolling process, so I don't think we'll see the full impact until, you know, that's run through the system. Environmental health, in terms of the recharges, that would probably sit more with building control rather than with SRS. SRS don't tend to put many charges on the property themselves. They work with other departments. Some of the environmental health issues are related to public burials. So if somebody dies and they haven't got anybody who can cover their burial costs, then obviously as an authority we deal with that, and we have seen an increase in those this year, which is why why we've got that overspend there.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, both. Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Thanks very much. I've got 2 questions. My first one was with regards to homelessness, and it says there's an underspend of just over 500,000, but obviously there's significant spend in the first place on homelessness. So I wondered what we're doing, because obviously when it comes to budgets, we're now looking at everything and saying every directorate is going to have to make cuts to their budget and savings in their budgets. What are we doing to try and bring down the costs of homelessness? Are we looking at our own places, like our own hotels? Are we looking at investing so that we can reduce this figure, please? That's my first question.
Thanks very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Good, please.
Thanks, Councillors Williams, I guess. Yeah, we are looking at what we can do to reduce the amount of temporary housing, because I think we all recognise that is an issue and it has cost us quite a significant sum of money. I know Caris and Martin had their first meeting of a strategic housing partnership a few weeks ago, which is something that I've asked them to set up with all of our RSLs that operate within the borough, about how we can work more closely to say, you know, you as RSLs are all aware that we have a lot of people in temporary accommodation. We don't have enough stock. What can we do? What can we work in partnership with you to develop some of these things? Now, part of that could be that we look to create provisions ourselves. That is something that Councillor Williams will know that I'm keen on doing, and seeing if we can explore that. But I think with that, to your point, Councillor Williams, is what is the most cost-effective way of doing that? It may be that it is that we own a property and staff it and run it. It may be that we own a property and we bring in a third sector organisation or a social service to run it. So we're looking at all these different options. I know that the RSLs, or the feedback I got from Caris from that meeting, was that the RSLs were very keen and very cognizant of these problems. I think from the feedback that I've received, some of them perhaps didn't quite realise the extent to which we do have people in temporary accommodation in Bridgend. So I think actually it sort of shows that having these summit meetings really helps make it very clear to RSLs, who may not always be focused solely on Bridgend, about the challenges that we're facing, and then getting them on board to make sure that we are building the right product, as it were, the right housing for the people of the borough. So yeah, we are looking at all of this. We are very cognizant about how much cost it's going to be. We do need to keep in mind that, of course, due to the all-in policy, which isn't going to change, is from what we're hearing from Welsh Government, it's a very welcome policy, but we are also having conversations with Welsh Government about the fact that this is something which is now a statutory requirement for us, that we do have to make sure that everyone is housed, and that has remained from COVID, and what are the cost implications to that, and how are they going to make that sustainable, because that is a question we need answered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I'll bring in the leader now.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Just wanted to assure members that, and this is a good example of where we're looking at good practice from across Wales. So in every area, what we encourage officers to do is what solution has worked successfully elsewhere in Wales, and can we implement that here in Bridgend? And we're certainly talking to neighbouring authorities and looking at how they're responding to this crisis, because there's a pressure faced by authorities right across Wales. We know that from the evidence of the figures, but also that dialogue through our different networks. But that applies across the board, and we'll continue to do more work in that area of what are other authorities doing, how can we learn from them and learn quickly as well, Chair. And also, can I just say that I have to leave. I've got a meeting with the Welsh Government Minister at 2 o'clock, so we'll have to leave before 2 o'clock. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm conscious of the time as well, so we'll have to make progress soon. Caris, please.
If I may, Chair, I was just going to add to what Councillor Good has said this afternoon, which is to say we did have our first meeting of the Strategic Partnership, and we shared with them the information that we currently have with regards to the numbers and the makeup of the people who are currently presenting for temporary accommodation. And we have another meeting coming up shortly, in particular to look at options for single people, because 59% of our referrals are now single person units. And that's quite a change from prior to the pandemic. So some of them have got experience in that area. So they were very keen to work with us, and we will follow that up. The only thing I would add is that, of course, bringing more houses into use is quite a long-term endeavour. However, Welsh Government has made available some transitional capital monies for local authorities, which we've bid for and we've been successful for. And a lot of that will be about working with the registered social landlords about purchasing properties and bringing them back into use. So looking at vacant properties, you know, in this case residential across the area, and buying them and bringing them back into use, and that capital funding has now been approved by Welsh Government. So we're obviously very keen to push that ahead, but it is quite a long-term endeavour to bring up the numbers of houses that we've got, bearing in mind the number of people that who are currently waiting for more permanent options.
Thank you, Caris. And Councillor Good, you'd like to make some more comments?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I did actually only come back in to say that I similarly have to jump off to go to a meeting with the Minister at 2. But additionally to that, as Caris has mentioned, I think it should also be noted that a comment I made several hours ago at the beginning of this meeting, that we do also have the funds in terms of bringing properties that aren't in use and charging the council tax premium on that as well. So that's another, you know, as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, we can't look at that as a revenue base, but actually as something that we're using to increase the number of houses within the system, because I think that is really important. And it's quite encouraging that I know that several of the properties that are currently being charged the premium are now on the market. So people are taking proactive action to say, oh, actually, well, okay, we're not using it, so we can sell it on, and then we can look at how that housing can be used. So I think it's quite an encouraging thing. I think it's showing that our policy of a bit of carrot and a bit of stick is having an effect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. Councillor Williams, you content with that?
Yes, thanks. I've just got one question then, one final question on this report. And I think it's for Kelly, this one. It's to do with claims. In the report, it says about the increased costs of court cases. I just wanted some clarity firstly. Do all claims go through this pot, through the Chief Executive's directorate, or are firstly directorates responsible for their own claims within the directorate, for example, slips and trips in our town centres and things like that, or does it all come from the same pot? And then, given that there's some increased costs there for going to court, and every time you turn on the TV now, there's always an advert for some sort of claim about everything these days. Obviously you can't go into contents of claims. Are we content that the pot of money that we've got isn't going to increase further? We haven't got any big cases that are currently going through the courts that are going to add to this cost, because again, it's something you can budget for, but it's each day you'll have your own surprises every day, and you're reliant on somebody's decision at the end of the day as to whether you've got to pay something or not.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Kelly?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. There's different pots of money here. So things like slips and trips, they are not dealt with internally by the legal department. They go through the insurance department, and they contract with an outside legal firm linked to the insurance company to pick up those claims. So there's a separate pot of money for them, and I think Caris can advise on the size of that pot. In terms of what comes through legal, it's generally cases that we take so that we instigate the court proceedings. So generally it will be the childcare legal cases, the deprivation of liberty cases, prosecutions against other individuals, or civil cases against other individuals. So there is a slight split between whether it's childcare or non-childcare, but essentially there is just the one pot of money. We do sometimes have claims brought against us. They are, I would say, few and far between. They're usually civil claims, obviously brought against us for various reasons, but they don't happen very often. And when they do, we usually link in with finance then and put some contingency in. So generally, when they do happen, we're aware that they go in to happen. So I think the last one we had of any significance was in relation to the health and safety issues at My State Comprehensive School. We knew about that, and there was a contingency put in the budget to cover that one off.
Thanks, Kelly. Caris, did you want to add anything to that, or is that sufficient?
No, I think Kelly's covered it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed. There are no further questions on the Chief Executive's Directorate. So just finally on the council-wide budgets and the appendices, do any members have any questions on this section of the report? Councillor Williams, sorry, did you say something? You're on mute.
I thought we covered council-wide off at the beginning.
To a certain extent. The only comments that I had were it mentions at the end of the report that any underspend would be dedicated on new highways and children's playground refurbishments. I just wondered what that amounts to. And with regards to corporate support, the report mentions that because of the better than expected Welsh Government settlement, potential redundancy costs weren't required, I believe, but going forward, if there's a challenging budget in 24-25 of around a 3% uplift, I think Mark mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, will that situation change and more corporate support be required? And will that have to be factored into the budget? So yeah, two questions there.
I suppose that is an assumption question, and we're always reviewing our assumptions. So if we do have to allocate some more to that one, then we shall. Regarding the capital programme and the I just lost out on my page now, but anyway, regarding the capital allocation for playgrounds, I mean, I think that was that's where we would have to go if we didn't have any capital receipts that we could allocate towards it. Obviously, if we get a capital receipt in the meantime, then we would use that. But as a backstop, then we would revert to capital financing.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thanks, Chair.
Do any members have any further questions on this report then, after almost 4 hours discussing it? No, I can't see anyone indicating. Therefore, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank all the invitees for attending today. And if you're not required for the next report, you may leave the meeting. I'm conscious of the fact that officers have to leave shortly and cabinet members have to leave. So I was going to take a break, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to take a break because the officer for the next report will has to leave shortly. So we'll move to item 5 in the Performance Management Improvement Plan. I'm conscious, Graham, Councillor Walter has got his hand up first, and then I'll move to Alex, who's going to present the report.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to say I have to leave at 2 o'clock and I do apologise.
No problem. Thank you for your attendance, Councillor Walter.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to item 5 then, and that's the Performance Improvement Plan, Performance Management Improvement Plan rather, and I'll now ask Alex Rawling to present the report.
Thank you, and I'll just do a really quick intro if that's all right. It's been about 8 months since Audit Wales attended Governance and Audit Committee with their report on performance management in BCBC, and it's about 5 months since I reported this Performance Management Improvement Plan to our CPA meeting in the summer. That Audit Wales report was a trigger for action, but we'd also identified issues in other reviews, including the Council's first self-assessment, and through an internal audit, PI audit. So we pulled together the findings of all of those exercises under various themes. So issues with our performance management framework, the way we develop and monitor our corporate plan and business plans, issues with our culture, roles and responsibilities, problems with data quality, accuracy and analysis, performance management capacity and the need for a permanent home for the performance team and additional capacity, and the performance management system so that we're using the existing system to its full potential. The full performance management improvement plan is included in the appendix to your report, and I think you can see from that that most of the short-term activities were completed through the development of the new corporate plan and delivery plan. Some of the medium-term activities were for performance teams to enact, but overall the actions to date include: on the performance management framework, we've defined a new set of wellbeing objectives and ensured they're fully and comprehensively reflected by aims, commitments and PIs, which was one of the criticisms. Ensuring our PIs measure whether we're achieving our aims and not just whether we're delivering on our projects or commitments. Having a better balance of commitments and PIs that measure inputs, outputs and outcomes, some that are measured annually and some quarterly. Some that are new and others with previous information to compare trends over time, and having a strong set of PIs and targets comparable with other councils. We've also done some work to raise awareness and provide training on that new corporate plan, delivery plan and performance framework, both with staff and members. On cultures, roles and responsibilities, we've published a new performance framework with clearer roles and responsibilities. Saved our directorate business plans on the council intranet, and provided training on the performance framework, roles and responsibilities with directorate teams. On data quality, accuracy and analysis, we've developed forms for each individual PIs from the corporate plan, and an example of one of those is included in your Appendix 3. We've done performance and data training with Data Cymru with a cohort of 20 of council staff involved in performance management. We've started work with Audit Wales and Internal Audit to develop a process for completing regular internal PI audits, and we've developed new mechanisms for analysing, summarising and presenting performance data, which we discussed with COSC at the session last week. On performance management capacity, we found a permanent home for the performance team. That's alongside the policy team in my team. We've appointed a corporate performance manager, which is Kate Pask, who's also here today, and we've done some training for the corporate performance team and directorate performance teams. And then finally, on the performance management system, we have adapted the system to address the new corporate plan and delivery plan.
improved system reporting to meet changes from the COSC session last week, all of which will become evident from reporting in December, and held a development session on the performance management system for performance champions led by the corporate performance team. But there's still a fair amount to do, and with a really tiny team. The longer term improvements are generally more difficult. A lot of them are sort of cultural issues across the council, and we'll continue to work on them this year and actually no doubt beyond this year. They include developing a stronger culture of challenge amongst officers, including the internal PI audits I mentioned, and more relationship building across teams. Developing a stronger culture of challenge amongst members, acting on our discussions last week about presenting performance data, and clarifying, improving and agreeing the role of scrutiny in performance. Improving our use of user perspectives, survey and satisfaction data through work with yourselves, starting at the January meeting. Improving or even replacing the performance management system, and looking in more detail at how we benchmark performance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex, for outlining your report, and thank you for all your work, and to Kate as well for all the work you've put into this. We did invite, at the suggestion of Councillor Jones, the Audit Wales attend this meeting to discuss some of their recommendations. We thought it would be useful for us to ask them for their opinion on their recommendations and conclusions from their report. However, they declined our invitation because I understand they only have a budget to attend a single meeting, and they've already attended the Governance and Audit Committee meeting to present this report. However, because it covers operational matters, and I believe monitoring the operational performance of the organisation, and because this report has come before us today, I thought it would have been useful for Audit Wales to come here, and they could have joined online without any budget implications. So therefore, I propose that I write to the Chief Audit Officer for Wales to express our disappointment. That said, we have a number of questions, and I'll come to Councillor Griffiths first.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could start, Alex, by saying I think this is an exceptional report. I think it really gets into the detail, and I think it's also open and honest with our current position and the position where we started, which was with the performance management plan, but one which was, I think, quite out of date, and not only from the content perspective, but also from a process and a measurement perspective. So I want to congratulate you on a very small team achieving what I think is actually a really good report, and actually sets out our strategy in short term, medium term, and long term for how we can improve this very critical part of measuring our performance, and actually then driving our performance as an authority. So I think that I'm not going to really say anything negative on this as well, because I think you've covered that already. You've said that there's still work to be done, and yes, there is. But I think the position that you've put us in now at this time, given that you've been working on this for, I think, less than a year, if I remember rightly, I think it's an exceptional step ahead, and it really gives us a firm foundation for the future. I think we should be complimentary to Audit Wales, actually, because I think they did identify the critical things that we needed to change, and I'm really pleased that we've brought those in and responded to them in a very positive way. So actually, I'm not going to say any more other than thank you very much. I think this is a fantastic report, and I just hope that we can continue to deliver against the goals and the tasks that you set us. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I'd echo those thoughts. I think it's an outstanding report which tackles all the recommendations and conclusions proactively. The only question that I would have had is how we change, I guess, the culture of scrutiny. One of the recommendations was that we as scrutineers, I guess, need to have more information and analysis of that information. I think they mentioned that we were good at collecting information, but not that good at analysing. And of course, as scrutineers, we're only as good as the information we receive. So I think there has been work in that direction, isn't there? And steps, the direction of travel is excellent in ensuring that we have the correct information to ensure that we are that critical friend and provide that challenge to the organisation. So thank you very much, Alex, for that. Would you like to respond to any of Councillor Griffiths' comments?
No, I don't think so. I think that was delightful and so unusual.
Okay.
I think you've all been exhausted by the morning on budget.
Yeah.
Just a real quick one, I suppose, on the analysis side of things. So very, very briefly, we've added that front sheet to the analysis process for the quarterly reporting. There's a little bit more analysis involved in what we've said we'll report for Q2. So we've got those heat maps and the analysis by wellbeing objective on how we're doing. But what I did forget to mention was a couple of the graduates in the team are also having a little look around Wales to see what other authorities are doing, because, you know, we've said before, haven't we, that Audit Wales seem quite clear that other people are doing this better than us, but we can never really get any more information about where that's happening and in what ways they're better than us. So we've put a little bit of a call out to some of those we think might be doing well at this. And actually people are being really, really positive in the way they're responding. I think partly that's because everyone's just had feedback from Audit Wales on their user perspective data, and everybody's, without fail, everybody's had a pretty bad report from what I can gather. So I think on the positive side, that is making sort of performance managers around Wales work together, share information, and try and improve together.
Thank you, Alex. And I know that you're working with the Scrutiny team as well on how you bring performance management reports to Scrutiny, and that will become apparent to the 4 different Scrutiny committees in due course. Martin Hughes, Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one to follow up on my congratulations to Alex on the achievements that have been made to date. It's specifically on page 55, the performance management system, where I think Alex has sort of highlighted that there are some shortcomings with the system that we have at the moment, and there's an ambition to introduce a new system, which I understand is called Power BI. If that's the system that most other local authorities are using, then maybe that's something that we ought to try to prioritise, but also appreciating that there are costs in moving from one system to the other in terms of, you know, price and resources. I just wondered how far Alex had thought this one out, and how the discussions with ICT are progressing. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Alex?
The honest answer is hardly at all so far. We've had an initial conversation with Martin Morgans to say, you know, could this be a goer? Is it possible? Is it feasible? And I think the early indication he gave us was it's not impossible, but it's not something that's, I think his point was it's not going to be anything that's going to solve any of your problems in that Audit Wales report. So I think we kind of deprioritised that until we'd sorted out the rest of it. But yeah, I think now that's probably a decent time to start reinvigorating that conversation.
Thanks, Alex. Councillor Hughes, you contend?
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you very much. Mark?
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Chair. That's Alex throwing a pen round, I think, or a highlighter. Right. First of all, just wanted to pick up the fact that yourself as Chair and Councillor Hughes and Councillor Griffiths have all praised Alex and the team, and I would echo that. And you know, the detail of the report shows how far we've come in terms of certainly some of the processy issues and some of the things that were recommended to us. I suppose I just wanted to pick up on something else Alex mentioned, which is the culture, really. And I'm going to try and sort of quickly link the 2 reports this morning. So I said something this morning that we're going to have to get better, inevitably, about focusing and prioritising on what we do within finite resources. And I think part of that is also then understanding performance. So it's not about continuing necessarily to do the same thing every year. It's about trying to recognise, was the investment we made in a particular service, or was the spend on a particular service effective? And you can only do that in a relative sense by understanding performance. So the bit I was just going to focus on is just the cultural bit, really. I think the organisation, and I include obviously myself and all staff, but I include members, all have to get better effectively of understanding whether something is value for money and whether it's performing well, because invariably at the moment there's going to be an alternative or a lot of alternatives where we could spend that money in a different way. And again, we might all have different views about that, but you know, we've picked up this morning consistently, haven't we, that it's going to be difficult because you can make a case, and I could probably make a case for almost everything that we do, but in a relative sense, we need to understand performance, and we need to understand that much better to make those decisions and make those decisions well moving forward. So that's just a contribution, if I may, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's really useful, changing the culture of the organisation. Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I wholeheartedly welcome Mark's comments there. I think this is providing us a platform to move from an organisation which makes some decisions, at least by the seat of their pants, if you like, which is about gut feel and about experience of individual officers. I think this does give us the opportunity to move from there to become a more data-driven organisation where decisions are made on accurate, timely and reliable data. I don't think that's a short-term thing that we can achieve. It will take quite a long time to get the processes, the IT systems and everything else in place to give us the information that we need. And then, as you say, we need to then change the culture to start to rely on that information rather than officers who have been doing it for 20, 30 years, who know the answer before they start, and maybe the information contradicts. But I think that's a culture change that we need to move through, so that we have equal respect, if you like, between experience of officers and also the data that's in front of them. So it is a very big culture change, and I think that will take probably years to actually get to the full fruition of that. But as I said earlier, I welcome the work that Alex has done, because that gives us the foundation that we can actually build upon that over the next 2 or 3 years.
Thank you, Simon, for that helpful contribution. Are there any further questions on Alex's report? No, I can't see anyone indicating. So I think that was a success, Alex. Congratulations to you, Kate, and the team for all the work you've been doing and continue to do on this particular item. And no doubt we'll see you shortly at a future scrutiny meeting. Thank you so much. We'll now members move to item 6, and that's conclusions and recommendations. I don't know whether our scrutiny officers have been able to capture 4 hours of conversation, but Jess will do her best to summarise the conclusions as per usual.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I don't propose to necessarily summarise obviously all of members' questions and answers during the session. Suffice to say that that there was a lot of discussion held. If I may, with the first report, if I take members through a couple of the possible recommendations that I've picked up, and then I'll move through into some further information that perhaps the committee would like to request based on some responses received today. Firstly, in terms of the recommendations, moving back to the Education and Family Support Directorate, there were some discussions, I think, once again, around the home to school transport policy and the perhaps unavailability of a date or likely date of that being published. And I think there was some reference made that the committee may wish to write to the Welsh Government Minister to put their weight behind Cabinet in terms of trying to expedite the publishing of that policy, or to have some information about its likely availability as soon as possible, bearing in mind that the council is likely to have to make some very difficult but necessary decisions, ideally in receipt of that policy, otherwise in its absence. And then with regards to the Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate, I picked up, I think the initial matter arose from Councillor Heidi Bennett's queries, but also supported them by, I think, a couple of other members, with regards to the issuing of some communications regarding the cost pressures in social services and wellbeing directorate, particularly around there was discussions around the cost per head of residential services, etc., and legal work, and effectively the very complex issues that are driving the pressures and overspend in social services directorate, and having a very clear comms for residents to understand some of those pressures. So if I may, I'll pause just there for recommendations, and then I'll move on to the various requests for information, unless you'd like me to carry on.
Yeah, we seek members' views first of all, Jess, on those. I think we should write to Jeremy Miles, the Education Minister, to support the Cabinet and the WLGA on the home to school transport issue. It's been quite some time now since they've promised this new setting out the new policy on home to school transport, and it's essential, if we're going to consult before the new academic year, that's put in place. It's a significant budget pressure within the Education and Family Support Directorate, so I think that would be a sensible approach. And then with regards to the Social Services Directorate, I think that would be, I would endorse your comments and recommendations there. Do any members have any other points to raise on those two issues? The only thing about the Social Services Director that I would also mention is going back to what Councillor Griffiths mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, in that we need to be able to set a budget which is, I know we have to set a balanced budget, but we need to set a budget which is realistic as well. And given the circumstances which we face within the Social Services Directorate, and what Councillor Gebbie has said regarding baseline in the budget, it'll be important to do that, I think, during the budget setting process. And no doubt that'll come before the Budget Responsibility and Evaluation Panel and before us and the other scrutiny committees when we discuss the next midterm financial strategy. But I think we ought to bear that in mind as well in our, I suppose, our conclusions from this meeting, in that we need to set a budget which is realistic as well as balanced. Okay, over to you, Jess, for any further remarks.
Thank you, Chair. Just continuing then with the budget report. There was a fair amount of discussion with regards to the 5-point action plan that has been very recently implemented to start to deal with the in-year cost pressures that are now arising, and I think it was alluded to on a couple of occasions, particularly so the recoupment payment and paying costs. And I think as the Chief Executive and also the Cabinet Member for Finance had indicated that perhaps there could be a paper forthcoming to, whether it be this committee, perhaps we can discuss that in the forward work programme, to look at and monitor the progress, albeit I think there was some discussion that there's not necessarily any targets set against that at the moment, I think, to achieve the best possible, bringing us back to break-even position as possible. But the committee may wish to look at that in the forward work programme and have some further information on the progress of that. There was some discussion with regards to the action taken against non-payment of council tax and whether there's any court action ongoing, what the costs associated with that are. Obviously, members had some responses from officers with regards to the actions prior to court action, but I don't think the costs were necessarily available to members today, but I think there was an offer that perhaps that could be brought to members' attention, and maybe we could request that information if the committee would like. Moving through then to schools' delegated budgets, officers were asked what is being done to help schools to monitor their own spend, and acknowledged that was challenging. And I think Lindsay indicated there was a meeting to be held with all heads on the 9th of November. And they'd be doing some modelling scenarios of what the cuts are going to look like, if there are to be any cuts, I should say, or any further ongoing cuts, what that'll look like. And he was happy to provide that information back to the committee. Again, that's something that if the committee would like, we could request. And I think finally in this particular report, the last piece of information that I picked up was in relation to the catering prices review, or the overspend of the catering prices, and there's an indication that the next review, or the previous review was 2 years ago, the indication of the next review is that it's ongoing, but that there should be some indication of figures by the end of this quarter that could be made available to the committee. And I think there was a request that was acknowledged by Lindsay with regards to that review, looking at portion sizes, sufficiency for older pupils and less wastage for younger pupils. And I think Lindsay gave some information to the committee with regards to the following of Welsh Government guidelines in terms of portion size, but also waste management that he was going to feed back to the All Wales group. But certainly around the review itself, if there are to be any figures available, maybe the committee would like to request those. And that was everything I had picked up, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jess. Are there any comments from members? So on the school's delegated budgets one, Jess, you know, you mentioned that's going to be a significant concern going forward, isn't it? Obviously, we've got, I think it's 2%, isn't it, for this financial year, and then 1% thereafter. That was agreed as part of the budget last year in the midterm financial strategy. It's resulted in surpluses falling from, I think, off the top of my head, £6.8 million to £72,000. Now, head teachers and governing bodies have been asked, as Lindsay said in his comments, for a best case scenario and worst case scenario modelling for the forthcoming financial year, which is going to be very challenging. That will mean that a lot more schools than the current number will go into a deficit position, and we'll have to understand more about the ramifications for that, because of course all schools have to have a deficit recovery plan then, and it's going to be incredibly difficult as we go forward for schools to actually recover from that position. So I think that's something which we probably need to explore in more detail, and potentially that could be considered as Scrutiny Committee 1 going forward when we discuss the MTFS. But apart from that, no, I endorse all of those comments. Any members have any feedback for Jess? They're all content, Jess. So we'll come back to you. Unless they all drifted
Everyone's
off.
exhausted, I think, Chair.
Yeah, they are,
Everyone's
yeah.
exhausted. Just to say on that last point as well, obviously, you'll be aware, and some members may be aware from the papers as well, that catering services has been requested as an item to come before SOC 1. So if members did have any matters arising from today and they wish to email the scrutiny team, or indeed, obviously, anyone in Lindsay's team, I'm sure that you know, that will be welcomed in terms of anything that they'd like to pick up arising from today. Finally, just on the performance monitoring improvement plan, I certainly picked up that members were on the whole very happy with the report itself and the direction of travel arising from that. Obviously, there's some discussions regards to the culture change and any changes to system and software, etc. The only point I picked up, Chair, is the committee's disappointment in terms of Audit Wales not accepting the invitation to attend today's meeting to discuss operational matters, and whether the committee wanted to make any requests or recommendations in that regard, or anything else that I may not have picked up. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're all very content with the organisation's response to Audit Wales' very helpful recommendations. This is not to denigrate what Audit Wales have recommended or concluded, but it would have been useful to actually question them on some of their remarks, to understand a little bit more about what they meant in their conclusions, recommendations. Nevertheless, Alex, Kate, and the graduate team have, I think, done an amazing job at getting us to this position. There's going to be progress going forward, as they mentioned, and I know that Alex is going to be working with the scrutiny team on how that performance data is communicated to all 4 scrutiny committees, and how we look at aligning that performance with the corporate plan, the wellbeing objectives, and the 5 ways of working. And to ensure that our forward work programmes mirror that as well. So I'm content with that. Are there any other members like to make any comments? Councillor Jones, please.
Yes, very quickly, Alex, because I'm very conscious that members will be fatigued now with this rather long meeting. 2 points from me. One, the 5-point action plan as outlined by the Chief Exec. Could I please suggest that be brought to BREP in the short term? You may recall at the previous BREP meeting, we highlighted the fact that there didn't appear to be a financial management plan moving forward. There looks as if to be some plan in place, this action plan. So that's my first suggestion, that at the next BREP meeting, perhaps the Chief Exec could come along and talk through that action plan, which he's utilising at the moment. Secondly, the performance management improvement plan, I endorse all the comments that have been made previously, but that is going to rely heavily on the provision of sound recent data. And I picked up in my discussions with Janine Nightingale, Director of Communities this afternoon, often the comment was being used, commercial sensitivity. Now, yes, I understand the position of officers, but we can't get away from the fact that we are spending public money, and there needs to be a way as to how we can negotiate public scrutiny of these type of issues. So my request would be for the monitoring officer to have a look at this and to ensure that there is a forum that we can scrutinise all processes. And I say this twofold. One, officers need to have our support and public protection in the decision making when they're confronted with these type of sensitivities. And secondly, we cannot have a situation where we are spending public money, and then when we question the expenditure of that money, we're being confronted by, we can't discuss this because it's commercially sensitive not to do so. Public perception will be, well, I shudder to think what the public perception would be, but we've got to find a way to overcome this. Whether or not that type of material can be discussed in open forum in scrutiny, whether or not it could be in a closed session, or whether or not it could be discussed at BREP. But I'm afraid we can't just sit back and allow that type of response to be made, because we are talking about significant sums of public money at a time we are making cuts to vital services. And I always, in these circumstances, apply the public perception test. What will the public expect us to do? I hope I'm making sense. I don't wish to come across as challenging in that, because I accept the position that they're in, but we need to have very professional discussion as to how we can overcome that obstacle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think you make some really important points there. And it's just occurred to me that in my role as Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chair, I sit on these, and of course, Scrutiny Committee 1. I sit on the School Improvement Group. I sit on the Social Services Improvement Board. But there doesn't seem to be a similar board for, well, there does seem to be a board which is being established. I think, didn't Councillor Good and Councillor Spanswick say they were going to be sitting on it? And potentially there's a role to play for a scrutineer. It doesn't necessarily have to be me, because I don't necessarily want more work to be put on my shoulders, but it could be that a nominee from this committee were to sit on that board and to ensure that there's an element of scrutiny, as well as the executive branch of local government, that we also have a scrutineer on that board to ensure that we have full sight of all of the different issues. And I think that may ensure that provide the public with assurances that we are being a critical friend and challenging of the administration, especially when public money is being spent on commercial projects. It's often too easy to hide behind the commercial sensitivity argument, as you mentioned, but we do have to be mindful of the fact that we are spending significant sums of public money. So I fully support your suggestion. Councillor Jones, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you. And you know, it's all about open, transparent local government. And that's what we're here to ensure. And as I say, I want to really emphasize this point. It's not about coming into conflict with officers. It's trying to work with officers and trying to enhance this public scrutiny aspect. And even if we had to go into a closed session where we have been briefed on sensitive and commercial matters, I don't see a problem with that. And we have the ideal forum to do that, and that is BREP. But I welcome the introduction of this project management board, and we should wait and see to see how it functions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I thought Councillor Granville had his hand up, but he's put it down. So we'll go to Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you. I just wanted to support Martin on his comments there, because I think, and Jess, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, I think under the Local Government Act, there is a section in there that says that officers must not waylay councillors in the doing of our duties. council business. So I think perhaps that might start to fall in that remit there, that we are being waylaid somewhat, because Martin, you're quite right, we had nothing come to BREP, and we could have had that come to BREP, so perhaps that is the correct forum for it to come through to in a closed session, and I'd support that. Thank you.
Perhaps we can make a request then, Jess, on to support Councillor Jones's and Councillor Bledsow's suggestion, if that's okay.
Yes, Chair, I was just going to say, so I think in the first instance, if and I'll be led by the committee, but perhaps what we could ask is that that I think it's the I beg your pardon, I think it was Councillor Jones suggested perhaps the monitoring officer in the first instance can provide some information on the best forum and the best way in which that information can be properly and legally relayed to members, and indeed whether that is through BREP or in fact its process is different. I know there's other discussions about the process of BREP in itself, or whether, as you say, there are these boards that perhaps there could be a nominee from the committee or from Scrutiny. But perhaps in the first instance we can ask what that best process would be, and then we can relay that to the committee and obviously formulate a way forward in terms of then scrutinising any of those items that may be labelled either commercially sensitive or otherwise can't initially be held in the public domain.
Sure, that's fine. And I think, you know, we're bound by confidentiality clauses, aren't we, as members? And there's no reason why, as Councillor Jones says, we shouldn't meet in camera if necessary on commercially sensitive issues which can't be put into the public domain but could be communicated to councillors. So yeah, I'd appreciate that if you could take that up with the Chief Legal Officer, Jess. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is there anything else that you need to bring to our attention?
Not on the conclusions recommendations section, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move to item 7 on our forward work programme, and we'll come back to you just to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. The committee approved its forward work programme at its meeting on the 3rd of July 2023, and it's reviewed and added to it at subsequent meetings. The forward work programme for COSC is attached to this report of Appendix A for the committee's consideration. And the recommendations monitoring action sheet to track the responses to the committee's recommendations from its previous meetings is attached as Appendix B, and you'll see that the tracker is updated as responses are received and circulated amongst members. The forward work programmes for the subject overview and scrutiny committees are attached as appendices C, D and E for coordination of coordination and oversight